the button. I was just, I'm silly.
Yeah, this is just what a live event looks like.
We're live. Okay. Hi, everybody. So let's just go. Okay, Ryan, are you, we're good to go?
Yeah, we see you, Ryan.
Yeah, just for the screen to load.
Yep, there we go. We're on YouTube.
We're live.
Yes.
Hi, everybody. So let's just go.
We are live.
Okay, Ryan.
And of course, don't forget to share all your experiences today on all social media using our hashtag SpaceUpLive.
Yep. Hi, everybody. So welcome to the very first edition of SpaceUp Live. This is the first online global space unconference. You can follow the grid on spaceup.org/live. We have a range of exciting talks this evening, or wherever you are in the world. It's, as you'll see, we have over 375 signups from 58 different countries. So we have quite a global reach this evening, over in Europe, that is, and your host tonight.
So, hi, I'm Ryan Bradley Evans. I'm a software engineer by trade, and I'm also co-running R&R Space and SpaceUp Live with my co-host Ryan Laird.
Yeah, I'm Ryan Laird. I'm a freelance editor, science writer. You can find me on Twitter at RJMLaird. I'm also a co-director of R&R Space. And we also have Remco.
Yes, hello everyone. Remco Timmermans here. I'm the CEO of the SpaceUp Foundation, and I am really, really proud to see so many people on this first online edition of SpaceUp. So thank you very much for joining.
So R&R Space, we are a fairly new events company. We focus on people, ideas and skills in the space industry. And we started off in 2018 really with SpaceUp, as we've wanted to bring a sense of community, particularly here in Leicester in the United Kingdom. And we've been working alongside the university to help develop that sense of community for the sector here. And that's
right. So the first SpaceUp Leicester was a sellout, and
here we are, last year in Leicester.
We increased in size again, and we sold out again. And you can see those wonderful happy faces from the second SpaceUp Leicester. We hope you'll all have happy faces like this by the end of tonight.
So here we are with SpaceUp Live, and this wouldn't be possible without our sponsors, Spacebit. So Pavlo, you want to say hello, a brief hello? Hi.
Hello, everyone. Thank you for having me here. And thank you, Ryan. It's a pleasure to support SpaceUp and now Space Live as well.
That's brilliant. We'll get you a bit more from Pavlo in a little bit later on as well, with some more exciting stuff about Spacebit.
Yeah. So a big part of SpaceUp is the grid. So normally at a SpaceUp, you fill in little post-it notes and you post on the board. We've had to do things a little bit differently here for the first online edition. So we did a call for proposals, and members of the public, people like yourself, were asked to sort of submit different ideas and talks. We had a sort of brief moderation there, but the topics are very interesting topics we have for you lined up tonight. So if you go to our website, so spaceup.org/live, you'll see the full sort of times. This is in British summer time, so please adjust for your own time zone there.
So there's several different session types, as you might have seen from the schedule. So we're just going to go through them one by one to explain what they are and how they work. So the first kind of session we've got is a T-5 slot. And they're basically 5-minute talks where we take the speaker's slides and we make them automatically roll on. So that means they're really fast paced and they have to stick to the timing. So a bit of pressure there. So obviously go easy on them.
Yeah. So we have some very.
So we've got 2 slots for T-5 sessions. The first block we've got Geoff, Sajjad, Chris, and Ramasamy, who look like they're giving some really interesting talks. And in the second part, we've got Damien, Eldridge, Hamid, and Marco. Again, some really interesting topics there. So look forward to them.
And an important part also of SpaceUp, I mentioned the grid, and we have sort of different formats that a grid session can take. Being an online format, we sort of stick to just a typical presentation. So there's a 15-minute talks, again, on a variety of sort of interesting topics. So first up, we'll have Vera talking about space for equality and inclusion, Adam from the Austrian Space Forum, there's Nicole from SEDS-USA, Galton, about 75 students, and finally Liam Kennedy from ISS-Above. So you see there we have talks from the US, Austria, Brussels, and India. So big wide range of speakers of different nationalities.
So we've also got a panel session for you today, all about how COVID-19 is impacting the space industry. We've focused on the panel. We've got a set of questions ready to ask the panel, but also if you've got questions for the panel, do put them in the YouTube chat section and we'll monitor those questions for the panel. So on the panel today, we've got Manny from Rise Space and Technology, we've got Sue O'Hare from ESABIT UK, we've got Melissa Thorpe from Spaceport Cornwall, and we've got Kartik from SatSearch.
And finally, we have 60 seconds to land videos. So this is where we ask you to submit 1-minute videos showing perhaps your stories about SpaceUp. We'll talk more about the 10-year anniversary. So Remco will tell a little bit about that shortly.
And of course, SpaceUp wouldn't be SpaceUp without getting everybody involved. So we've set up a Slido link. There's a link in the description below the YouTube stream. You can click on, or you can just go sli.do/SpaceUp and you can type any questions you want in there related to space, talks you've seen today, any interesting things that you think some people on the stream would be able to answer. And you can upvote and downvote other people's questions. When we get to the end, we'll go through them in order of the number of upvotes, and we'll see how many questions we can answer.
So this is SpaceUp Live. So I hope you're all sort of, as many people still sort of joining us. So thank you very much. And yeah, we have a short video here from Remco, who's CEO of SpaceUp. So just hear this.
Welcome to SpaceUp Live. Today is not only the first ever online SpaceUp event, we also celebrate the 10-year anniversary of SpaceUp as a space unconference platform. From a humble start in San Diego in 2010, the spirit of SpaceUp has gone around the world with events in all continents. Thank you to all those event organizers who've made this happen. We celebrate 10 years of bringing together local space communities, and by doing that in so many countries, we're indeed bringing together the global space community. The networking at SpaceUp events has made many space careers. It has seeded ideas for new space startups and given a platform for sharing a global passion for space to many more. Thank you all for 10 great years of space community building, making SpaceUp the leading brand for space unconferences. So here's to the next 10 years, where we will continue to facilitate you in bringing together your space community. If you thought of organizing a SpaceUp event in your area, we're ready to help you.
Thank you, Remco. So Remco, over to you. I'll just bring up your other slides. Just a second. So
Yeah.
I just need to do the slight switch here.
Will they move forward automatically, Ryan? I set it up as a T-5 type thing,
They
so
will,
it
yeah.
won't take longer than 5 minutes.
Just that. Yeah. So, and here we go.
Can start at the beginning. Yeah. So thank you all for again for joining. I wanted to just introduce what SpaceUp is. I have a short video and I'll post that to social media later, but I wanted you to, especially those people who have not been able to join a SpaceUp event, to understand a little bit what SpaceUp is. So we're celebrating our 10-year anniversary. The first SpaceUp Unconference was held in San Diego, and I see that some of the early founders have joined us on YouTube. So thank you very much. And that's really where SpaceUp started. After running in the US for a few years, a team in red t-shirts in this picture here brought it to Europe in 2012. And it's really been going all around the world ever since. In fact, there have been SpaceUp Unconferences on all continents. And yes, that includes Antarctica, by having a live link to the Concordia station at one of the events in 2012. So from the beginning in the US, it's now a global platform. So what is SpaceUp, really? And we're doing a slightly different form here, but SpaceUp, the rules are very simple. First of all, it's an unconference. And secondly, it is about space. What does it mean that this is an unconference? An unconference is basically the same as a conference where everything is organized, but the speakers and the talks. The speakers and the talks are determined by you, by people joining in and voting about the subjects. There will be a minimum if non-pre-assigned speakers, unless of course they are awesome. This is an example of the CEO of, the Director General of ESA joining us in Paris a few years ago. So we do make exceptions for people, but the floor really is to be yours. The idea of SpaceUp is really to bring people and ideas together with other people and ideas. It's really an open platform for anyone with an opinion about space to share that opinion. There's different formats that we use, and we see that in this SpaceUp Live as well. T-5 talks, 5-minute talks based on the Ignite idea, where you have 20 slides that auto-progress, making a talk exactly 5 minutes. There's 60-second to land videos, thanks to SpaceUp Stuttgart, where that was introduced in 2013, to allow people who cannot attend in person to be there and to join in the conversation and maybe plant some seeds for continuing talks. Other traditions that we unfortunately cannot do during an online talk is having t-shirts and name tags and goodie bags. Well, we'll have to do with Zoom backgrounds and YouTube links to replace that this time, but that is very much a tradition. And of course, cool group pictures. Again, this is a bit difficult, but then again, we are joining here from over 50 different countries, which I think is pretty unique. And perhaps someone can take a screenshot of the Zoom screen here. Good food and drinks is often arranged by the organizers. Again, we'll have to do with whatever we brought ourselves. So make sure you take a break, get something from your fridge, and join your space companions around the world. New things that have kind of evolved during the different SpaceUp events is really any way that helps bring people together. So be it jigsaws, be it live links between different events, or being live links like we're doing right now between over 50 different countries. But the idea of SpaceUp, as you can see in these traditions, really is to bring people together in creative ways. People and ideas, meeting people and ideas, designing spaceships together, making jigsaws, doing talks, really bringing the networking on stage. That is really what SpaceUp is all about. It's a dynamic concept. Non-SpaceUp event is alike. It's very much driven by whoever attends SpaceUp. SpaceUp is an open platform, meaning to bring the networking on stage. It's driven by the participants for the participants. So the future of SpaceUp really is in your hands. And as I said in my video, I would really like to invite you once that is possible again, or until it is not possible, do something online and organize a SpaceUp in your city, in your area, or on your Zoom account. So thank you very much, everybody who is joining. And I see many event organizers and past event participants joining on YouTube or here on Zoom for joining us and making this an incredible 10 years. So I'm really looking forward to the next 10 years of SpaceUp. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Remco. So next we have Pablo from Spacebit. So Pablo, do you want to share your screen?
Well, thank you. Yeah, thank you, Ryan. I'm sharing my screen right now. And well, it's the first ever online event for SpaceUp, and actually it's very interesting to be in this mode, even though the situation is quite unfortunate. Ryan, actually I can't share my screen because you are sharing, I believe.
Yeah, okay,
So
yeah,
says,
okay,
yeah.
let me just stop. Yeah, okay, yeah. Go ahead.
Yes, and as you know, Spacebit started a few years back, and we are working now on the first UK mission to the moon. And I will talk a little bit later about the mission itself. Before that, actually, I wanted to play a short video, which is just about 2 minutes, so you can see what we did in the last year. And that actually includes SpaceUp as well. So I'm just playing a very short video here.
So Pablo, there's no audio, is that?
Oh, there is no audio? Okay, so I can explain what is happening here. So actually, here's IEC. We participated in IEC last year, become a member of IF, and it was quite an interesting journey for us from UK to US. And I was able to actually give a speech on the main stage, which was quite interesting as well. Then we went to Tokyo in a Moon Village Association in Japan. It was quite interesting events, and we presented our plans, and actually the Awoki Nasagumo rover, which we actually tested in the lava tubes in Japan. And also we went to Kyoto, where we participated in some interesting events. This is actually footage from the lava tube. It's not the narrowest part, but you can see the rover as it was there. So we had to wear the helmets. Actually, it's quite interesting that going to the stars, we have to go down as well to the lava tubes first. And here's the launch. So we launched some test equipment on the Up Space launch in I believe December last year, which was very interesting event at the Spaceport America. So that's in terms of updates from Spacebit. And as you know, we are first UK mission to the moon. Our rover is quite different from any other rovers that ever flown into space. So first of all, it's quite small. It's actually that big. And it's 1.5 kilogram. It has legs instead of wheels. So actually it's gonna crawl on the moon. It's not gonna ride on the moon. We are flying in 2021 with a US company called Astro-tourism. And obviously our rationale as a company is sustainable settlement, of course. What can it be? And we believe that in a few decades, we will be able to do that and achieve our goal. As you know, we are not alone. So as a company, there are a few companies which are heading to the moon, iSpace, robotic intuitive machines, and we are doing it in the UK. So at the moment, we are at step 2, where we have a technology which help us to deliver payloads to the moon. And the next stage for us will be surface exploration and kind of looking how we can build a base on the moon. So we are very active in terms of STEM education, and we will be telling more in the next couple of months about what we're doing with STEM. So it's the first launch of ULA Vulcan mission as well in 2021. So it's kind of interesting times. Everything is first time. Our rover is quite small, as I told you, you can see it here. So the next mission, so what updates I can give you. So we're planning 2 more missions. The next one is 2022, 2023, where we have a mothership with at least 2 Asagumos inside. And obviously the first mission, the plan is, if we are lucky, we will land not far from the lava tube, and we will try to enter the lava tube and see how we can actually go, and how we can maybe potentially live in those lava tubes. So we'll be taking some measurements and scientific data as well. But obviously the minimum goal for us is to walk at least 10 meters on the moon. So it will be a very small step for the rover, but probably quite a big step for the exploration for the UK. And at the moment we're developing Asagumo, which is flying. We passed the CDR stage. Now we are doing ICD and actually doing engineering models and testing some parts already. But we also have a mothership with wheels, which can host up to 4 small rovers. And obviously the design is you can transport them with the wheels to the location of exploration, and then the small ones will go and explore lava tubes. That's our goal. And we believe that lava tubes can help us with the future exploration, and especially human settlements on the moon. So we tested our rover in the lava tubes, and we will be showing the footage very soon. So that's me. It was actually quite an interesting experience to be inside of the lava tube in Japan. And also another update, which actually I mentioned, kind of mentioned at the last SpaceUp, that we are building a lander. And we might be building a lander. And we did announce that we're building a lander in Dubai. So we're building a lander. There are a few partners already. We will be announcing them soon, but the first partner to announce is a construction bureau Yuzhnoye. And we hope that it will help us to build this lander.
And, sorry,
yeah.
Sorry to interrupt you. I think you're not sharing your correct slides. Just it's just stuck on the video.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. So
yeah, sorry.
I'm sorry. It's okay. Let's correct that. Just I'll show you very quickly. Just okay. So yeah, just very quickly, here's the lander that we will be developing with Yuzhnoye. It's a PDR stage. We also have a model which we demoed at the event in Dubai. And just going very quickly, so this is actual test of the rover in Japan in lava tube. And that's how we plan to explore the lava tubes. And also we have this build version of the rover. And basically that's an astrobotic lander, peregrine lander. Yeah, so that's all in terms of updates. So as you can see, we have more than 1 mission now coming up, and hopefully 2021 is successful, not with a long delay. And the lander, first UK lander, and actually I would like to open it to other UK companies and private individuals. We really want to encourage people to participate in this project. So if you believe that your technology can be used on the first UK lander, please let us know. Thank you very much.
I wonder if anyone on YouTube has any questions there. Just to our YouTube audience, maybe 1 or 2 questions quickly. It's maybe a slight delay.
I think there is a slight delay. I'll post it in the chat. So
yeah, give it a moment, but yeah. So if there's any questions, people can post to the YouTube there, and and we'll be monitoring that. And I'm sure Pablo will be also sort of help reply to some of the comments as well.
So actually, we've got a question from Nick Howells. Have you tested it in deep regolith?
So that's a good question. So at the moment we are, can you hear me? Yeah. So yep. At the moment we are kind of designing different types of the leg. Basically, there are a few options, but so far it will look like a ski pole. So you will have a sharper end, and then also you would have like a thing which can stop us from going into deep regolith. Just in case, so depending which area we're going to land. And in terms of the actual test in the dirty vacuum chamber, we have it planned. So we don't really have that opportunity right now. So we have a separate small vacuum chamber that we're doing our test right now, and we have some regolith for the test. But in terms of actual environment, so we have those tests planned. For example, it's quite likely to be in South Korea because they have a large vacuum chamber. But as I said, we're working on the design of the legs, and we have this compromise with the sharp and a ski pole kind of design, which can help us in the deep regular environment.
Okay, thank you very much, Pablo. I think one more question, and then Pablo, are you happy to jump on the YouTube comments to answer any more questions that might be there?
Sure, yeah.
Okay, so one more quick question. How fast do you expect the rover to go across the surface?
Yeah, that's a good question, and it's basically a compromise, and it's not some. It's also engineering and strategic decisions that we have to take. So actually, it can move relatively fast. Relatively fast, I mean. Faster than 1 meter per minute, but we are not sure yet if we should move at that pace, and it will be estimated or we conduct our vacuum chamber test, so we can see how our electronic behaves, how our motors behave, and then we will come up with optimal thermoregulation of the rover, and we will see what would be the optimal pace. However, we estimate it to be probably not faster than a meter in a couple of minutes, and then stopping, sending data, and then walking again. So that kind of mode.
That sounds really fascinating. Thank you ever so much, Pablo. And for the people in the chat that didn't get their questions answered, as said, Pablo will join the YouTube chat hopefully and answer more of those questions.
Okay, so next up we have T-5s. Let me just switch screens now.
Just 1 second.
Yeah, I'll just stop that. And
yeah, so the first T-5 is by Geoff, who will talk about, well, what are you going to talk about to Geoff? Over to you.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, I want to talk about Earth observation and human spaceflight tonight. They're usually quite mutually exclusive, as the one often tries to replace the other. But tonight I want to talk about how we, first of all, perceive our planet. So if you can imagine standing on top of a hill, everything seems pretty solid around you, and if you jump up and down, it doesn't move very much. And if we look to the horizons, we can see everything that appears to be permanent and unmoving. And that's what's ended up resulting in things like the flat Earth ideas, and then in historical times, the fact that the Earth was the center of the universe and things revolved around us. And it wasn't until astronomers like Copernicus and Galileo came along that we got this different worldview. And I always like showing a picture of a rocket, and it wasn't until astronauts went into orbit that we got our first appearance of what the Earth looked like. So Gagarin was in low Earth orbit, but then the Apollo astronauts went further away, and they were able to capture images like this. So what we got here is a picture from lunar orbit, so we can see the Earth now in the context of another astronomical body. So this is a completely new picture from what we've normally seen, and this is what classed as one of the most influential photographs ever taken. And the more famous one, though, perhaps is this blue marble picture, which everyone must have seen, that's recorded from Apollo 11. And it was from images like this that astronauts started to think about seeing the Earth in a much broader context. And this is a great quote from Michael Collins, which I won't read out here, but he talked about the Earth being fragile and small and shiny and beautiful. And it's our home. Everyone who's ever lived has lived on there. And if we take another step back or a step out, we can think of the the pale blue dot image that was collected by Voyager 1 at the suggestion of Carl Sagan. And so in this image, the Earth is only a single pixel. It's even smaller than a pixel at 6 billion kilometers away. And so what a lot of astronauts seem to appreciate was something that they referred to as the overview effect. And that was the ability of the situation of being away from the Earth and looking back and seeing this as the place that we came from. You're probably thinking, what's Earth observation got to do with all this? And the fact is, even though commercial space flight is coming along, it's very unlikely that many of us will actually have the resource, the funds, or the time and capability to actually go into space and experience it for ourselves. So in Earth observation, we are often referred to the pretty picture people or the spies in the sky, but we can give some of that perception of the surface of the Earth and how the Earth looks in a broader context. And particularly at the moment, we have an explosion of satellite systems from the free and open access of Copernicus and the Landsat system through to more commercial systems from some of these organizations I've listed across the bottom here. And we also have the technology now to access these. So we have things like Google Earth Engine and the Sentinel Hub EO browser in this case, which allows us very quickly to see satellite imagery of the Earth. And as I say, some of this is free and open access. Here's a pretty typical image. It's quite a nice image of the intensive agriculture in the Midwest of the US. But we can see here different agricultural patterns, etc. And these sort of images have a beauty in their own right. But if we then look at this over time, so not only do we see a still image, but we can actually see changes on the Earth's surface. And here we have the seasonal dynamics of vegetation in Africa, which is in some ways almost visualizing the Earth breathing over time. And other processes that we often think of rivers being quite fixed features in the landscape, here we can see they can be extremely dynamic as long as we can image them over long enough periods of time. And here's another example. So this is a coastal example from the UK. And here we can see the changing height of the tides, different wave conditions, the movement of sediments, the movement of sand dunes around across the surface. So we can see all of these processes that are happening on the Earth. And very relevant at the moment is the images of the fires in Australia at the turn of the year. So we're almost seeing these in real time. It's not actually real video from space, but the sequence of images is showing us the areas burning and the smoke blown offshore. Finally, here's an example of some glacier retreat. And we can see this here, we have the impact of climate change and sea level rise, and we can capture this type of information very easily from Earth observation. So back to my original point. So what I would like to say is that as we all won't have the opportunity to go into space, I'd like to see us using Earth observation to try and at least get some appreciation of the overview effect. And then we can start to make important decisions about how we treat our planet into the future. Thank you.
That was brilliant. Thank you very much, Geoff. So now, so the T-Minus lives are split up into blocks of 4, as we mentioned earlier. So we'll take quick questions at the end of the block of 4. So next up, we've got a T-5 talk by Sajjad.
Yeah. I can share. I can see my slides. If you. Okay. Hello, everybody. I'm Sajjad Ghazanfarinia, Master of Science, Space Engineering, and Senior Space System Engineer, founder of Fazadotir. I was always thinking of making wealth out of my knowledge, so I tried to teach my knowledge and my learnings in a way that people like to pay for it, as you may see in these slides. The gap between university education and industry needs is inevitable. So I wanted to use microgravity projects to instruct in practice and educate during competitions, and also make a platform for collaborations. having the content and knowing the customer, I started my business on space education based on my previous acts. So it could be a very good solution for the who wanted to participate in the space industry. So we made experience-based materials available offline. Also, we searched for next generation from the well-educated students from the Cubers Club. Cubers in the website could manage their favorites, create online catalog, and share ideas and propose for the projects that, which were on the website. However, our website needs modifications for the international level. We have three main services. The first one is education on baseline CubeSats. We had 23 workshops, 5 short courses, and 3 events managed by ourselves. And also we have consult through the website in 12 disciplines. We made $20K in the first 2 years, and mostly by education. And we have now 1 to 7 active users on the website who can do their projects. This made us dare to change the mindset that CubeSat is not only for the education and could be used for the business, and students can have their business based on CubeSats. Afterwards, like the thing that we have at the first, again, starting from the need or problem, we see that ideas are too much, mostly innovative, and we had mentors and investors, but the products are limited and the performance is very low. So we started to make an open innovation platform on the website in order to manage them all. The open innovation platform with similar idea of making connections was to manage the process of projects due to innovation. It made people to be part of our Department of Research and Development. So we had access to unlimited number of researchers and innovators through the website. The process is so simple, so you need to just register and then start self-education, creating online catalog for yourself. And after that, you can share your ideas or communicate with others or propose for the projects. As for detail, I can say that anyone can register to the website from everywhere. Mainly we focus on Iranians from everywhere in the world. And then you can get the services for free. You can have mentorship, training, and online catalog. You can have your page.fazadotir for free. And having looked at the catalogs, individuals can shape teams or collaborate or cooperate in different projects for proposing on the website. But the question is, how do we make money from this website then? We just break down the big problems or commercial projects into smaller projects, and then we share on open innovation platform to be done using the innovation solutions. But how do we select from the projects submitted, from the proposal submitted on the website? We use a AI-based evaluation algorithm that uses some parameters from the customers and some parameters from subjective concerns. These are some example projects that we have run through this platform, like My Astronomy as a smartphone app, and also CanSat Kit. You can see here our colleagues from different cities of Iran, and we are planning to broaden our colleagues for tomorrow from different cities of the whole world. It will be a very good solution to go to next step to start cooperative global projects on SDGs, and also continue the thing that we have done on space applications through smartphone apps. Also, this is the time that you can ask us for the crowdsourcing and crowdfunding in a space project. Is it possible to use this capability on open innovation, and is it visible in our place? I could say that it comes to your project. Thank you all for having me here, and you can contact me through the @fazadotir in Twitter, in Instagram, or anywhere in that social media.
That was fantastic. Thank you very much for that amazing T-5. Up next, we've got Chris, who will talk about Mars Initiative, I believe. So we're just getting his slides up now.
Yeah, just give us a moment. Yeah. Okay.
So once again, while Ryan gets the slides up, I'll just remind everybody, you can post your comments in the YouTube comments, and we'll take a very short Q&A for the T-5s after all 4 sessions have gone. But obviously, the presenters will answer more questions in the chat that we don't get to answer on the stream.
Okay, over to Chris. Yeah.
Hi, my name is Chris Bellant of the Mars Initiative. Looks like we almost got the slides going.
Yeah, just.
Okay, great, thanks. So as I was saying, I'm Chris Bellant of the Mars Initiative, and I'm here to talk about a very important but under-discussed topic of how are we going to finance the first crewed trip to Mars? How's the world going to pay for it? And more importantly, why is Mars important? Outer space exploration is really important to a lot of us because of what you see here. You know, explorations, humanity working together, going to see distant worlds, gets us inspired, and then we move on to astronomy, rocket launches, rocket landings. You know, how amazing is that we have rocket landings now? So Mars is the key to the space exploration program that we all yearn for, because it is a outpost outside of the Earth-Moon system, and that will drive the technology development that will then lead to exploring planets beyond and stars beyond. This is an example of technologies that will help develop, reduce launch costs, radiation protection, entry, descent, and landing, propulsion technologies. So what would a Mars mission cost? Here's a bunch of examples. The top half are NASA-led, the bottom half are led by other organizations. We think in the middle, about the $30 billion for Mars Direct is a reasonable estimate of what the mission would actually cost. To get an idea of what $30 billion is, here's the largest 2 government budgets in the world, and the red sliver is what $30 billion would be. So either government, you can see, could clearly pay for this if they really made it a priority. What else? Something more tangible that we can compare it to would be on the next slide. This should be coming up. Can you advance the slide?
Yeah, just up there.
Okay. All right. 2 aircraft carriers, about $30 billion. All the coffee in the world, $75 billion. So only 40% of the global coffee sales. The Louvre, the art in the Louvre is worth at least $35 billion. So where can we get $30 billion from? Could we just ask somebody to write a check for $30 billion to help send humans to Mars? Well, it turns out that we actually could. We could ask a company or a person to do that. On a quick internet search, these are the companies that have more than $30 billion cash on hand. Not value or profit, but just sitting in their accounts, $30 billion. They could fund the first crewed trip to Mars. These are the richest 28 people in the world, and they're all worth more than $30 billion. They could write a check to send humans to Mars. Except for Jeff Bezos in the top left corner, he could write the check 4 times and still have money left over. So governments haven't really done it. Those people that I mentioned and the companies aren't doing it. So I asked the question, could we join together, space enthusiasts around the world, and could we finance the first crewed trip to Mars? First, we got to talk about support. This is just a quick chart to show the bright green line. Support for Mars is increasing over time. If you look at statistics from around the world, support varies in different countries, but there's about 1 billion people around the world that support sending humans to Mars. Taking into account economic factors, poverty, ability to support a mission like that, there's at least 300 million people that support that and could contribute a small amount of money. And what am I talking about? I'm talking about just a cup of coffee a month. $3 a month from that group of people, we would have enough money to send humans to Mars in 3 years, which I think is amazing. Just $3 a month, which is an insignificant amount of money for most of us. Another interesting thing, Mars, the most efficient way to transfer humans to Mars, it would take about 300 million miles to get them there. And if you divide out the cost of the mission by the distance, it's about $100 a mile. So for $100 a mile, that would pay for the entire mile of the trip of getting humans to Mars. So if you contribute, your $3 a month over 3 years, or $100 all at one time, you're actually paying for the entire mile of humans getting to Mars. So I ask, why don't we all band together and try and do this on our own? We don't need to wait for someone else to lead the mission. And so that's what Mars Initiative is doing. We created a Mars Prize Fund to just start saving for that first trip to Mars, to try and get as much of the money as we can from people that are sick of waiting for it to happen. And it's going to be donated to whatever organization lands the first successful crew trip on the surface of Mars. So if you're interested in any of that, check us out at marsinitiative.org. Here's my email address. I'd love to talk about anything related to Mars or finance or space. Send me an email. Thank you for your time.
That was brilliant. Thank you very much, Chris. If you want to put that link in the YouTube chat, go ahead and check it out themselves. So the last T-5 of this little block is by Ramasamy from the IAU Office of Astronomy and Development. So when Ryan gets the slides up, we shall begin.
Just a moment. Yeah, it's disappeared. Just opening. There we go. And here we go. Okay, Ramasamy.
Thank you. Hi, everyone. So my name is Ram. I'm joining in from Cape Town, South Africa today. I'll be talking about Astro-tourism, a specific model of it called community-centric Astro-tourism that we successfully piloted in India last year. So first of all, a question: why invest in space and astronomy? As someone in space and astronomy, you must have heard this question from lots of people before. We usually say something along the lines of spin-offs and curiosity-driven science and the dinosaurs not having a space program. But of course, the reality is more complex. Someone once said, studying about a black hole is not going to put food on the table. There are lots of other immediate challenges and priorities for most of us. So this is the reason for the existence of our office, the International Astronomical Union's Office of Astronomy for Development. Our goal is to figure out how and where to use astronomy for socioeconomic development, basically the SDGs. This includes space as well. We fund small to medium projects, medium-sized projects globally that apply astronomy or space in some way to benefit society. We have dispersed, as you can see, 850,000 euros to 150 plus projects around the world, reaching people in more than 100 countries. So we do this through an open call for proposals. Anyone from anywhere in the world can apply to this. We launched the 2020 call for applications just last weekend. The deadline for stage 1 of the call is May 31st, so you can look up more information on our website. Community-centric Astro-tourism is one of the projects we funded through this call for proposals. It tackles a problem faced by many remote communities around the world that have limited livelihood opportunities and lack of basic infrastructure. The project was piloted in northern India last year in the mountainous Himalayan regions, if you know that. Many of the communities there have been living for hundreds and thousands of years in the same villages. But they're faced with lots of issues such as lack of electricity, poor education, and so on. So that's on the one hand. On the other hand, there is growing tourism in this area, which presents an opportunity. The problem is tourists are usually, they're interested in specific tourism routes. So how do you get the tourists to go off the beaten path? The clear night skies were one answer to this. So astronomy is a means of attracting tourists into these communities beyond their popular destinations. Stargazing holds huge appeal, and clear skies are a rarity in most of our cities and towns. Our partner in this project is Global Himalayan Expedition, a social enterprise based out of India. They've been setting up standalone solar-powered electrical grids in such remote communities. They have electrified more than 100 villages in this region. So once a village is electrified, what they do is GHE helps set up homestays where the tourists can go spend the night in the home of a villager. They also train the villagers on hospitality and hygiene, ensuring that it's a good overall experience for the tourists. So community members from some of these villages were trained on basic astronomy and telescope operations last year. Then one village was selected to pilot the project and also provided a telescope from the IAU grant. This formed the basis of our first Astro-stay. So now, in addition to the homestay, you have an Astro-stay, where a tourist not only stays in the home of a villager, but gets to experience the amazing night skies from the hands of a trained local astro guide. So Astro-tourism and homestays then provide two different but linked sources of revenue. In addition to astronomy, the guides also talk about local folklore, about their lives. Astronomy then, it's a gateway to an authentic local experience for the tourists. It provides some much needed interaction between the remote and urban communities. We call it community-centric astro-tourism because the project is owned and run by the locals, as well as benefits them directly, as opposed to an astronomy observatory or a research facility or a professional running an astro-tourism program. These Astro-stays, they create a lot of much needed additional income for the village. The project specifically targeted women villagers, training them to be astro guides, providing them an employment opportunity. We even found that working as astro guides boosted the self-confidence of these women. So overall, in the 4 months that the project was piloted in 2019, 5 Astro-stays were established. They attracted about 700 tourists with very little marketing, I should say, enabling the community to earn more than $5,000, which is a huge amount in this region. So next step for us is to identify other villages and communities around the world where a similar model could be set up to take advantage of the public interest in space and astronomy. There's a lot of context-specific work involved, so it's not merely a replication. So if you want to run a similar program in your country or region, or if you just want to know more about the project, you can always contact me on Twitter or email. The pandemic has put an unexpected pause on things, but we are hopeful that things will improve soon. Thank you for your attention.
That was brilliant. Thank you very much, Ramasamy. So now I think we've got a couple of minutes. We can answer a couple of quick questions from comments, and then we can move on to our next block. But as I say, do contact the speakers and ask questions either in YouTube comments or connect with them on Twitter or however they prefer for that to happen. So let's just go through the comments real quick and pick one or two from here. So I think, okay, one for you, Chris, just pick one out here. Somebody just put Kickstarter project. Have you considered anything like that for your Mars Initiative project?
I'm sorry, can you say that again? It's hard to hear you.
Yeah, so somebody in the comments has put Kickstarter project. Have you considered anything like that for Mars Initiative?
Yes, Kickstarter specifically won't allow you to do something like that, but there's other crowdfunding platforms that we have been looking into. So we have considered it.
Awesome. Okay, I can't see many other questions in the comments, to be honest. So I guess, Ryan, do you want to, should we move on to the grid session?
Yeah. So next up is Vera. Vera, do you want to share your screen? You might want to, I'll unmute you as well. Yeah. Vera, yeah.
Okay. Okay. Can I start? Can you hear me?
Yeah, please.
Okay, super. Thank you.
Yeah, I can hear you.
So hello, everyone. This is my third SpaceUp, the first one online. So it's quite exciting to be here. My name is Vera Pinto. I'm known as Astropolitica in Twitter, and I'm a policy coordinator at the EU Space Program in the European Commission. So today I will propose you 3 things: some food for thought, a different perspective, and a challenge. So to start with, and this will be a very rhetorical question considering the format that we are in, looking at this photo, what is the first thing that comes up to your mind? This photo was taken at this year's edition of the European Space Policy Conference. in a time where in our lives where we could actually have space events in person. And it circulated on Twitter, pointing out the fact that there was no women in the panel and that space events should be more gender equal. I was on that event and I heard women among the speakers. There were even panels that were actually quite diverse also. So I must admit, I felt puzzled when I saw the Twitter discussion. Was I being a victim of my own unconscious bias? So I went to the website of the event and counted all speakers, 72 in total. There were 18 women among them. This makes up to 25% of women speakers at the event, more than the double of the percentage of women that went to space. Don't get me wrong. I'm not defending that this is good. Far from that. So the European Space Policy Conference is actually a high-level conference. The focus of equality in boards, and it's missing women in high-level positions. In fact, women in senior management positions in Europe account for less than 30%. The European Space Policy Conference just showed that also in space, we are lacking gender equality in all levels. If we look at the statistics of women and science and technology, in 2018, there was almost 15 million scientists and engineers in the European Union, UK included, and 50% were men and 41% were women, the European Union average. At national level, you can see that the numbers tell a not so bright story. Looking at the statistics available, you can see that men are particularly overrepresented in manufacturing. Around 79% of scientists and engineers are male, while the gender ratio in the service sector is more balanced. 54% are men, 46% are women. However, if we look to the space sector, 20% of the workforce is women, same level as 30 years ago. Equality has many dimensions. Equality is not just about gender, it's also about being equal no matter your racial or ethnic origin, religion or belief, disability, age, or sexual orientation. If we look at NASA workforce, for example, we see that only 28% is not white or Caucasian. Space agencies like NASA and ESA have offices and statements about diversity and inclusiveness, which is a good thing. However, when you further read on the actions, it focused mainly on gender. For example, I couldn't find public available statistics on how diverse the space sector is, on what concerns other dimensions of diversity beyond gender. A fact is that only last year, in 2019, for the first time, the OECD Space Economy Report included a chapter on gender. So clearly, there's still a lot to be done. So my question for you is, for so many years, there have been discussions and activities to raise awareness for the involvement of women in space and increase the participation of girls in STEAM education as well. There was also a lot of discussion about how to increase diversity in space sector. There are regulations and laws to increase gender equality in general. I agree that slowly we are seeing some changes. And this type of event, for example, usually has a higher rate of women participation. But looking at the numbers, there's still a lot to go. I truly believe that we as individuals and professionals can also have a role. What can we do different? How can we be a driver for change? How can each one of us contribute for a more inclusive and diverse space sector? I started this talk by looking at the belly button of space and within the space sector reality. But now I would like for us to turn into another direction, not far from our initial introspective reflection, and position ourselves, space community, towards the world. I invite you to think of what space can do for all its senses and be an inclusion enabler. How can space data and services help the world we live in to be more inclusive and equal? How can space help people with disabilities, LGBTI people, Roma people and other minorities, women, victims of violence and vulnerable groups? How can space help equality and inclusion in areas like employment, social protection, education, healthcare, access to goods and services, even sports and traveling? For your inspiration, let me show you some concrete examples how space can be an enabler. So NIM is a ring that the person who wears it can press it and send a help request to a number of predefined contacts by the person wearing it. The help requests includes the sender location using satellite navigation data, so that help can know where to find it. Fuel Service is actually an app available only on UK and is helping people with disabilities to find and get assistance to refuel their vehicles. Refueling can be challenging for people in wheelchairs, for example, and this app wants to help them by showing which gas stations have attendants who can help. Blind Explorer, it's a sensorial guidance system that allows anybody to move in an autonomous way and securely through an unknown path without the need for mobile signs. It is especially accessible for blind and impaired vision people. These apps are available for download on Google Play and Apple Store. I did it on my cell phone to see them, to explore them. But they are not the only ones. You can find further examples on the link at the bottom of this slide, for example. However, I have seen already a number of ideas trying to address some of these issues. We must admit that there are not so many space-enabled apps available and mainly operational, specifically addressing inclusion of groups that are more vulnerable. That is why I finished my presentation with a challenge for you. In this slide, you find some of the current calls for ideas using space data and services, bringing many opportunities for creative minds that I know that we are all creative minds among the SpaceUp audience to step in and to combine business with social responsibility. Some calls are more oriented to the current situation we are facing with the coronavirus. Sorry. I had an issue with my slides. So some of these calls are more oriented to the current situation we are facing with the coronavirus. But please keep in mind that there is a lack of solutions addressing specifically the needs of more vulnerable people, and the current situation will only make it worse for those who are more vulnerable. Although these competitions have an initial focus, they are open to participants proposing other type of value-added ideas as long as space data and services are involved. These opportunities also include support and financial assistance. So why not submitting ideas addressing those who need the most? Who you will get financial and technical support to further develop your idea and business case. And you will be at the same time contributing for a more fair, equal, and inclusive society. Will you accept the challenge? Thank you. You have your mic off, Ryan.
Yeah, I just
Yeah.
turned it off. So I'm just sort of looking at the comments. So yeah, I'm just seeing. I mean, I know from personal experience, yeah, like Heidi says, yeah, the UK SEDS National Student Space Conference has been particularly representative, and just sort of seeing a few other examples. ISU, sort of very sort of diverse. There's a few comments about, you know, International Space University. I
will be giving a talk in 2 weeks on the Space Cafe web talk where I will further in more depth speak about these issues. And of course, I will always be available to reply to any questions or help anyone that has an idea to redirect them. Especially because with the current situation we are facing, that, for example, blind people, it's going to be very challenging for them to go back to normal life, let's put it this way, because of social distancing and because they need to touch everything. And there's also people with vulnerable health and elderly that are isolated, that they will need to have access to goods, to health, and to medication. So we need to rebuild and renew a bit the way we were working to also include these people. The protection of victims of violence. There was a raise on domestic violence during the confinement. So how can we help them? I'm pretty sure we have creative minds, and we will be glad to have some instruments to help also.
I don't see any particular questions. There's quite a few comments that have come in. So Anne Swift says, Vera, this is a great challenge, and I'm sure that these business applications ambassadors can also help take your message to the wider entrepreneurial community. So yeah, if you have any questions there on YouTube, then yeah, please share them, and I'm sure Vera will help respond there. But thank you very much, Vera.
Thank you.
And just to add, that was a really good talk, and the comments really reflect that. So well done, really interesting.
So next up we have Adam Crellin from the Austrian Space Forum. So Adam, do you want to share your screen?
Oh. Hello, can you see my screen now?
Yeah, that's good.
Wonderful. Okay, so hi everyone. My name's Adam. I'm a medical doctor kind of by day. So I work in the National Health Service here in the UK. But what I'm here to more talk to you about is about being an analog astronaut and a bit about kind of the crazy last year I had. And talk a bit about the training I underwent to become an analog astronaut at the Austrian Space Forum. Throughout the talk, I'll try and keep an eye on the YouTube, so I'll try and answer any questions kind of as I go along. But if I don't manage to answer any of them, I'll include my Twitter handle at the end, and you can fire any questions to me on Twitter. So to start with, just to introduce to what the Austrian Space Forum is. So it was formed in 1998. And really, the first thing I want to highlight is that it's only the Austrian Space Forum in terms of its origin of creation, and that actually now it consists of over 220 people from about 15 different countries, and the primary working language is English. But essentially, it's a citizen science research institution that's led by professionals within the space industry, and it conducts interdisciplinary research, everything from astrobiology and geology through human factors and Earth observation. And we publish between 5 and 15 peer-reviewed journal articles every year, and that waxes and wanes depending on where we are kind of in our research mission cycle. We also provide an interface for the Austrian space sector and also further afield throughout Europe. And we support a lot of students that are just sort of beginning their space careers, providing internships and dissertation projects, and we also do a lot of public engagement through kind of from toddlers right through to adults. So that's kind of the brief summary of what is the Austrian Space Forum, and essentially how we do our work is we perform analog missions, so missions on Earth in Mars-like environments to test equipment and procedures for future Mars exploration. So just comparing the two photos here, this was from our mission in 2018 in Oman, There was a month-long mission out in the desert there, and you can just see how, in terms of the landscapes of the two images compare, how it would be quite easy to get into the kind of psychological mindset of being an astronaut on Mars. So this was our home for a month in Oman. And essentially the whole purpose of it is for the analog astronauts to perform like they would on a Mars-like mission, being in isolation, only leaving the habitat in the spacesuit simulator and performing experiments on behalf of researchers from around the world. So here's an example of an experiment that was performed at the last mission, looking at kind of composition of the rock. So in April last year, I began my training as an analog astronaut. So the Austrian Space Forum is, as far as I'm aware, the only analog mission research organization that maintains a permanent core of analog astronauts to perform research. So I was selected as one of 8 people from a broad range of countries. So we have everything from Italy and the UK, Israel, Austria, Greece, the Netherlands, and Germany. And everyone's from quite a diverse set of backgrounds, from medical doctors through to engineers and physicists and public health. So once we were selected, we underwent a 5-month period of basic training. So the way this was structured was we had 5 training blocks, 1 per month for 5 months, and each block consisted of about 4 days in length. It occurred in 2 locations, so we spent most of our time training in Innsbruck in Austria, which is the official home of the Austrian Space Forum and where their headquarters is based. But we also spent a block of time at the University of Stuttgart, using some of their kind of astronomy and Soyuz simulator facilities. So in total, the whole kind of training package consisted of about 160 hours of tuition and assessment. And in between the blocks, there was over 1,500 pages of homework reading. So that consisted of books, but also kind of training documents, spacesuit manuals, and the like. And all that culminated in us completing 8 final exams. So what kind of material did we have to cover to become analog astronauts? So the curriculum sort of divided into 5 sections. So we had our introductory training. So this was more like introduction to the Austrian Space Forum itself, how it's structured, the legal framework that it operates within, a bit of space flight history, and putting the modern context in terms of how we've developed over the years, and looking at basic formats of developing human missions to Mars. Next, we moved on to the generic skills training, which is more like the generic non-space specific skills that are required to run a Mars simulation. So that includes simple things such as like radio procedures and looking at how the mission architecture is constructed, through to things that are required for safety, such as firefighting and first aid. Following that, we move on to system-specific training. So this is essentially comprised of how to operate our spacesuit simulator, which is the kind of bread and butter of being an analog astronaut for the Austrian Space Forum. That takes up most of our time of training. The spacesuit simulator takes about 2 hours to put on correctly and about 30 minutes to take off. And there's a whole host of systems built in within that suit to accurately simulate what it would be like to be an astronaut on Mars. That includes everything from, there's a resistance exoskeleton to mimic the barometric pressure of a suit, all the way through to communications and heads-up displays. On top of that, we also have a significant physical, psychomotor, and psychological training, looking at, in terms of our general health and fitness, but also into how you manage stress, isolation, and working as a team within that environment. Essentially, if you're going to be isolating with 6 other people for a month, you need to be able to know how to deal with conflict and how to work efficiently as a team, which seems quite appropriate now for us sitting in isolation. And then finally, we had the actual science training. So for some, this was easier than others. So as a medical doctor, me having to learn field geology and astronomy was quite a big leap. But fortunately, I got to teach a lot of my colleagues first aid. So it does balance out. So looking back at the whole curriculum and the whole training process, I tried to have a think about what kind of personal attributes did we all share that really are required in someone who's going to be an analog astronaut, who's going to be that person performing experiments on behalf of researchers, and kind of being that public face of the organization. So the first key attribute I thought of was a simple desire to learn. And that's not even necessarily an expert's desire to know everything about their one subject. But you need an all-round curiosity about everything, because of the incredible breadth of the curriculum we were having to learn meant that you had to be able to willing to participate in everything. The next attribute I identified was persistence. So not that any normal person usually attempts this, but trying to tie a set of shoelaces, wearing 3 layers of gloves and a 45-kilogram suit definitely requires persistence, because it is extremely frustrating. Next, you need to be a team player. As I said, you're going to be living in close proximity, possibly in a stressful environment with 6 other people for a prolonged period of time in what might be quite a remote, perhaps extreme environment. And at the end of the day, you need to be someone that everyone can get along with, and someone who's very adaptable, and someone who can resolve conflict. And then finally, you need to be educators. As I said, we're the public face of the organisation, essentially, and we do a lot of outreach on various platforms, and you really need to be willing to engage with teaching others. For me, being a doctor, that's quite a natural thing to do, in that every doctor's responsibility is to kind of teach below the people that are below them in the process. But for other people, they've never taught before, and that for them was the challenge to overcome. So what's next for the Austrian Space Forum? So at the moment, we're due to have a mission upcoming later this year. Obviously, in light of COVID-19, things may change, but at the moment it's still intended that the mission will go ahead, and this will be a month-long mission in Israel, where we'll perform a range of scientific experiments in full isolation on behalf of researchers around the world. And the reason I bring that up is because no one at the Austrian Space Forum would forgive me if I didn't do it. But we're always pitching for more people to get involved. As I said, we're an international organisation, and we're always looking for volunteers. And at the moment, we're really trying to assemble our ground support team. So this is the mission support team who sits in Innsbruck and essentially acts as a Capcom, as any Earth-based team would do for a team to Mars. So there's contact details are on the screen now, but if you just look at the Austrian Space Forum on Twitter and shortly scroll down the page, you'll always find details of how to get in touch with us. So that's the end of my short presentation. I'm happy to take any questions. I'll have a quick look on the YouTube now, see if there's any sitting there. Let me see.
Yeah, there's quite a few questions. So, I mean, maybe if I sort of kick off. Someone says, did you get to go into the spinny thing? I mean, the centrifuge.
Yeah, unfortunately not. I'd very much love to give myself a test against the spinny thing or the centrifuge, but unfortunately not.
And as a medical professional, what do you personally see as the greatest challenge for human spaceflight to Mars?
Okay. So I'll be slightly biased in that my area of specialist interest is looking at the effects of radiation on the human body. And unfortunately, it's more of an engineering issue in that we just can't sufficiently shield against the radiation for a transit to Mars. And as things like the Mars Space Laboratory have shown, there are events that occur in space, you know, solar particle events that are dangerous enough to cause an acute radiation sickness in an astronaut and potentially kill them. Not to be grim, but and the big problem is just the sheer weight of shielding and getting it into space. So for me, I think the big challenge is shielding at the moment.
Okay. Someone asked, do you have any horticultural skills? I think like growing things on Mars. Do you learn anything about that?
So not personally. I know in our previous mission in 2018 in Oman, we did have a horticultural experiment looking at kind of what conditions can you get edible plant matter to grow. And I do believe some of our colleagues got to have some homegrown lettuce out in the Omani desert.
Okay, and let's see. Was a reason why is only men in the same age? What was that? Is it okay? And all the same age and race went in. Well, I'm not sure what that means. Is that when is the Austrian Space Forum hiring again? So I assume that's in reference maybe to the Amadi. That's more the mission. Maybe how people can get involved in the mission.
Okay, so we're always taking on people who are interested in getting involved. I presume the question's maybe more specifically asking about when we're next taking on analog astronauts, which unfortunately I don't know when the next call will be. Okay. But as I say, we're always looking for people to get involved in mission support. If you have any kind of specialist skills, so for example, we have a very thriving biomedical engineering team that consists of psychologists, doctors, engineers. Then we're always looking for people to get involved. Usually, there's a role for any background. So the organisation has lawyers, journalists, engineers, physicists, the whole range really. If you've got an interest in space and you're a hard worker, then we're always willing to listen.
Okay, thank you very much, Adam. So please look at the the questions on the YouTube stream there. There's quite a few more questions, but we'll have to move on now. So next up is Nicole Chase. Nicole, do you want to just share your screen there?
Yeah.
Great, thank you.
Alrighty. So I will be talking to y'all about space for everyone. What does it mean, and how do we get to space being for everyone? So before we begin, a little bit about me. I am the current director of projects for SEDS-USA. I am also the current director of the Student Space Ambassador Program for the Mars Generation. The Mars Generation is an international organization that's based here in the States. That is targeted towards young students ranging from 13 to 24 years of age who have an interest in space and in particular in Mars. I have a BS in neuroscience, a BA in geography, and a GIS grad certificate. GIS essentially means I like making maps and remote sensing. I've spent the past 7 years in the software and tech industries working in data and business analytics, along with in project management. Like I mentioned, I'm in the United States. And because this is relevant for my presentation, I am a queer, non-binary, but female presenting human. And I will go into what the heck that means on my next slide. And my pronouns are she and they. So back to school. I figured I would do a little back to school sort of thing because, well, school's really not in session in any part of the world right now. So diversity, inclusion, LGBTQ plus gender identity and pronouns. Diversity, essentially is, it is what you think it is, but it also isn't what you think it is. So diversity with respect to space isn't just people who look different than you or may have a different background than you. They're people who or different ages than you, who come from a different educational background, who maybe went to vocational school versus they have a PhD, and whatnot. Inclusion is the process of making those diverse groups feel more included without fear or judgment. There's really, there's a handful of programs that do exist to kind of showcase like the diversity inclusion, like the Brooke Owens Fellowship, for instance. It is a fellowship targeted towards undergraduate students who are either they identify as female or they identify as a gender minority, which I will go into when I talk about gender identity. That is a very awesome program. I know a couple of people who have gone through, and they're considered rookies. I know a couple of people who have gone through that and have had really good experiences with kind of being able to really see boots on the ground sort of stuff with why inclusion and diversity is extremely important, particularly for younger generations looking to the future with how they'll, eventually replace those who are currently in, the senior and middle level management in space industries. LGBTQ plus, this isn't just an abbreviation for those within those particular communities. It encompasses both gender identity as well as with pronouns. So gender identity, like I mentioned on my previous slide, I am non-binary, but female presenting. So non-binary is part of one of the gender identities. Non-binary essentially means that with the binary being male and female, non-binary kind of exists outside of that particular spectrum. So even though I'm female presenting, I don't believe or think that I am a female just because that label doesn't feel comfortable to me. Other labels within gender identity include genderqueer, which essentially means that you're within the binary of male and female, you kind of float seamlessly in between those two binaries. And agender, kind of as name implies, means you are devoid of gender. You just don't think you have, you either think you don't have one or it just doesn't apply to you. So, and I stress the importance of the fact that gender identity, along with LGBTQ plus, is a very sensitive sort of topic. A lot of people, don't feel comfortable about talking about it or being out to people because they're afraid of judgment, particularly if they're at a company that might be more like quote unquote old school, that maybe they're not progressive or open or accepting. And for pronouns, they're the way you should refer to somebody. Don't assume that because they look a certain way that their pronouns are that. I've been to a couple of conferences, most notably SEDS Space Vision last year at ASU, at Arizona State University. They had little stickers that we could put our pronouns on. They had, like the usual pronouns like she, her, they, them, he, him. But they also had blank ones for people that have pronouns that are outside of those three main ones. And it was really awesome because actually I suggested that idea because it was something that I feel like needed to show, inclusivity for people who, like me, aren't on a particular, who are a gender minority. So why are these terms important to the space industry? I mean, they're important because they're part of what makes space not only really interesting, but also they add a lot more, like all the people who I essentially refer to when I talk about diversity and LGBTQ plus and gender identity, they bring a lot to the table, and they might feel uncomfortable, like I mentioned, about actually talking about their experiences and talking about their concerns about maybe with people that they're working with, or if they're in school with their professors and their presumed mentors and such, that in order for space to become multiplanetary is kind of my hypothesis, that we need to really make sure that we understand what these terms are, what they aren't, and actually like put us all aside our sort of awkward sort of conversations that we kind of like touch upon stuff, but we really don't actually go all the way through because we think it's not so much icky, but we think it's uncomfortable, or, you know, it makes ourselves vulnerable and stuff like that. So it is good. It is good to encourage others to communicate even when they might feel uncomfortable in doing so, because if you're a self-described ally, you can, you know, show your support, show your enthusiasm for that person that may be uncomfortable because maybe they fear that they're just a diversity hire, or maybe they fear that they only got X thing because of Y reason, and Y reason is related to because, you know, they're a trans man or something like that. But also it is very important to make sure that you don't speak for them. You can, if they don't feel comfortable, don't push them, but also you know, kind of find that delicate balance between being able to encourage them and actually, you know, giving them support that they need. So why does space need to be for everybody? Like I mentioned on my slide, space is the most interdisciplinary field, and it should be structured like that. It should be structured in a way that instead of boxes, so like here's your engineering related boxes, here's your analytics related boxes, here's your manufacturing related boxes, and so on and so forth, and kind of like gatekeeping clubs where you can't get in if you're not from some prestigious university or you didn't work at some prestigious company or whatever, that people can still get around. People can still go in between those would-be clubs and those they can open up those boxes and look inside those boxes and being able to get inside and outside those boxes and still be able to succeed. Majors of all kind should have a clear definable path to get from where they are to where they need to go. Obviously challenges will present themselves because obviously stuff isn't black and white. But it is still important to make sure that if you're a student, or if you're a professor, or if you're a TA or an RA or something like that, to make sure that you really, you know, make sure that you're making people feel comfortable in that particular environment, that you listen to them, you don't belittle their dreams and hopes and such. And backgrounds, fields, and groups that are considered to be the quote unquote majority in the space industry shouldn't be shown as elite or as a goal for young people, because like I have a background in the life sciences and I'm working in the space industry. Do I have a degree in engineering? No, but like that's just one of the, like I know I'm not like a special snowflake because I managed to get into the space industry not having an engineering degree, but it's stories like that that kind of reinforce of how important it is to make sure that engineering isn't the only way to get into, to break into the space industry. So this is kind of the end of my presentation and kind of open discussion. So I'd be interested to hear from questions that people might have on YouTube, as well as on the Zoom call as well. What does the term space for everyone mean to you guys, to your company or organization? Is your company or organization doing anything to encourage these voices? Can they be doing something better? And finally, if you're from a group of privilege, i.e. if you're white, cis, straight, etc., how have you supported voices from other groups, other majors? Do you even interact with people who are different from you?
Nicole, your video is off. I'm not sure, are you comfortable just sort of sharing your video? I just, people couldn't see you there.
Oh, I mean, I can.
Yeah, if it's okay, if you want to. Well, I'm just looking here on the chats here. So there's people saying, I think Vera was saying, "I love your presentation. Yeah, we need diversity." Yeah, she's sort of there. Human society, relevance of SpaceUp, and I'm just seeing if there's any particular questions. Yeah, out of curiosity, what are examples of other pronouns? What other pronouns would you?
I mean,
you mentioned
like different.
Yeah,
like different combinations of, like my instance, like my instances are she/they. There's also like he/they. There's different combinations where it's like Z, like ZE. There's an XE. When you refer to someone instead of like Mr. or Mrs., sometimes it's MX.
Yeah. As David Shelton says, thank you, Nicole. It's important because we all need diversity. Yeah. I'm just looking for any particular questions, but yeah, Portia. Yeah, it's relevant because space is not diverse, and diversity of thought encourages innovation, which is key to many things in space. Yeah, I couldn't agree more. Yeah. Not sure there's any particular questions, but if there are questions, then please, yeah, post them to the YouTube comments there. Yeah, I see lots of comments. But if
yeah.
any questions, then,
and also if you want to send me a tweet or send me an email, both my email address as well as my Twitter, wow, I wish I could talk. My Twitter handle are listed below.
Okay. In which case, thank you, Nicole. And
yeah, thank you.
And then I think we have next up is Galton. Galton, do you want to share your screen?
I think hi, Ryan. You have to.
Do you have your slides?
Want me to go outside?
I don't know. For some reason, I'm not able to share from my device.
Oh, okay. I mean, if you want, I can share them. So,
yes,
okay, let me just bring it up then. Do I? Yeah, 75 satellites. Yeah. I'll just. Hang on. Sorry, I'm just muting a little bit there, and I'll unmute you. Okay, I'll unmute you there. Okay, I'll just share the screen, and then Galton, it'll be over to you. Let me, yeah, full screen. Okay, just yeah, just tell me if you need to advance your slides, and I'll do it. But okay.
Many thanks, Ryan. So 75 satellites mission was basically initiated in the commemoration of India at 75. So because of the COVID-19, things have changed. So certainly, I think what you have typed in with 75 student satellite mission sounds really applicable. So the program initiators for this were yes, please, thank you. So the program initiators were Dr. L.V. Muralikrishna Reddy, then Professor R.M. Vasagam, and Dr. K. Gopalakrishnan. So Dr. LVM and Dr. GK, they had been to Israel, and they had discussions at the parliament of their parliament in Kensett. So they had a similar program that is called Israel at 70. So on those basis, the senior management, they decided that India also to have a similar program. So this Space Tech Board, what it actually means is because this was the first one of its kind, not just in India, but globally, that we had initiated, in fact, the Miss Pramita Ramprakash, who is the CTO of the 75 satellites, with her network, she had initiated the Space Tech Board meeting. So you see quite a lot of, we're not spread thin. We are actually present in the real space industry clusters or places which is based out globally. So now we've also initiated a few of the discussions with, of course, in UK. That is, we've just started discussions with Shetland Space Center as well, how we could partner and take it forward. So what we are actually focusing is, yes, as Dr. Chase, what she was telling, we are not just biased with just men being on board, or it's just too very hayward. So we want to make sure that it's all we are completely we have the equal balance. So coming to the partnerships, 75 satellites is all about partnership. So we focus not just at the research and development, but how do we want to commercialize? So here, when it comes to in India, we have it's a continent itself. So we definitely need what would be a best suitable business model, when it comes to taking up these initiatives. So we made sure that what kind of partnerships are really required. Whether it is focused at the state basis, whether it is focused at regional basis. So on these basis, we have focused really about developing the partnerships with the stakeholders. Next slide, please. Thank you. So this is the host organization where we have a lot of core sectors being developed, worked, implemented. So whether it is at the industry level, how we convey to the industry, or what is that the government policies are right now focused with the specific requirement and the development. So these are some of the things which we are currently focused. Next slide, please. Yeah, the most important thing for us is how is that we are able to adapt to the new space industry, and why is that we are really focused right now at the moment with the CubeSats, and how is that we are able to commercialize these CubeSats. Of course, it's a different ecosystem. We have layered businesses when it comes to the new space itself, whether it is core focused training, whether it is core focused application, whether it is focusing at the core sector implementations, and how exactly we could actually go for the implementations. One of the things is how independently, how each individual, or whether it is an organization or a company, how is that we could actually bring in synergy in terms of implementation, because the synergies is what something we really miss when it comes to the implementation. Next slide, please. Yeah, so this is the picture taken from the Kensat at the Parliament, where you could see our president as well as vice president and Secretary General, who met with Mr. Ofer Anis, who's the Israel's Minister of Science, Technology, and Space. So this is where all the discussions and probably the initiative for India at 75. Next slide, please. So what is that we have done so far? How is that the India at 75? Where are we right now? So we did conduct few of the events. The most important thing was bringing in the institutes, bringing in the universities, as well as schools, which we have started focusing at of late in December. So when we conducted the events, also it was how we basically brought in the collaborations, and how is that we could go for the direct implementations with the space company. So basically the main focus was for us to have the knowledge economy, which means that the reporting and what is there on the paper and how is it going to the grassroots level is what something we really focused at in implementation. So this is some of the reports what we have done so far with the 75 satellites and the role of the secretary. Next slide, please.
Sorry. Yeah.
Next slide.
Yeah.
Yeah. So this is of course ultimately it's about the structuring the mission. So it's ultimately is it just we are focusing at the launch of 75 satellites? Is it we are just focusing 75 satellites and beyond? And how is that? Who is that going to invest money? That is where the financials is something, the getting the real working business model going for implementation is something, we are really working at. And I definitely do believe with what Chris Belton said, who is going to write a check, for whatever is the amount, is required for implementation, structuring, designing, and implementing the mission. So with India at 75, we certainly have really, we network with quite a few of space agencies, as well as with the space tech companies. And we also looked in how we could really be the voice of creating the specific requirement of the ecosystem, whether it is at the development, design, then testing, and then go for the launch, and then how is the control and the monitoring, how is these things, we could actually revive during the mission structuring. These are some of the salient points which we really touched in. And the most important factor which most of us, we try to evaluate is the translating requirements, because India is such a vast nation. Well, we need to have, because for every 250 kilometers, we have a culture and the language, dialect, everything changes. So the translate of requirements and how is that, we really go into the implementations to the monitoring level, not just after the launch, but it's beyond the launch and monitoring. How is that we are going to do? So these are some of the things we are making sure we are bringing in the stakeholders, as well as make sure how responsible we could cohesively value add to the structuring of the mission. Next slide, please. Yeah, so the 75 satellites for us, why is it, we are looking more focused at project-based implementation, is because since each institute, each university will take up a particular, of course, the systems engineering will be the core competence for the engineering institute. The company, the space company, which comes in to work with the knowledge transfer, with the technology, with with the value addition, will definitely be regulated by the local the local government or the municipal, depending upon the location of the institution or the university, which means that there is the synergy between the government, the institute, as well as with the company. So which means that how we could really impact at the grassroots level can easily be monitored. So we are making sure that the institute can, the university could actually be the voice in making sure that it's not just obtaining the product or service from the company, but also utilizing in terms of how we could create that awareness to the students. And of course, it's going to be led by the key faculty, as well as with the senior managements from the universities and the institutes. Next slide, please. So most of you guys definitely know about CubeSat revolution and why we are seriously really focused with CubeSat development. But basically, my background is I'm a telecom engineer and not totally focused. I was never into space earlier. So it was in 2018 that because of the senior management of ITCA, made sure, they brought in this program, they initiated this program. So that is where the real interest, it got developed. So making sure that how quickly, we could go for the implementation with all the stakeholders is what right now my role is. With respect to the systems engineering, as well as with the applications, that's where I'm trying to bridge in quickening the process with across all the stakeholders. Next slide, please. So again, it's all about the applications and the implementations. It's for that. This is where we are defining ourselves. Yes, where we want to stand, whether it's to the users or whether it's to the enterprise, and how is that. One of the later, I think we had a discussion in Spacebar last week when it came to the upstream and the downstream applications. So certainly, yeah, these are the more focused at the downstream applications, and how quickly and how certainly we could adapt with the CubeSat and the payload applications with the downstream. Next slide, please. So yeah, this is where I think we are really focused at when it comes to the implementation, why it is LEO, and of course, what is well, it's not just being cost effectiveness, but also it is space industry is not something which is like any other industry. So this is very serious industry and a serious business. So we need to make sure that we need to respect our competitors, or whether we are working with the other industries. So it's certainly, this is where we are very keen in adapting to the innovation, and of course we respect all the SDGs, and we identify what are the SDGs we want to really go for with a particular application at the grassroots level, or at the implementation level to the enterprise or to the end user, or it could be the upstream development of the CubeSats. Next slide, please. So these are our currently the space tech partners and the ITCA's 75 satellites consortium of institutes and universities. So we currently have 32 universities spread across India. So we intend to touch 75 and beyond, probably in once we really get started with the post-COVID. And we are very humbled with the kind of value additions, the encouragement, the what is that, how is that, the implementations, and how each company could actually support not just the institute, but also go with the students, how they could actually absorb the students, whether it is at the intern level, or whether it is at working as, and how smart employment could actually be employed. So this is where we are very privileged, that is companies internationally, as well as the locally evolved companies also, they are very keen. And of course, these are just very few companies what we have, but certainly the passion, the amount of the keenness they've brought into the system is something which is very, very encouraging for the 75 satellites, and especially New Space India. For us, I mean, ISRO is being the real backbone for any launches. But when it comes to the satellite and the CubeSat technology, I think the kind of support what we are getting from ISRO is also is something very, very interesting, and we are looking for some real good evolving partnerships. Next slide, please.
Okay.
So this is one of the first event which took place in 2018, where you could see the Chief Minister of Karnataka and also Dr. Mir Ariel, who was the program head for Israel at 70, presenting during one of their 3 CubeSats to the Honorable Chief Minister. So we made sure that during the inaugural, we had the stakeholders from Israel, we had it from UK, as well as from pan-India, almost of the institute university. That's when we started with the consortium approach, which we learned definitely from the QB50 project, which was something, great learning for us. Next slide, please.
We're nearly out of time, unfortunately. So.
Sure. I think you could go to the last slide then. So it's all about the events which is coming up. So these are the, yeah, you could go to the next slide, please. Yeah, it's just the this is the Space Tech Leadership Program, which we initiated, where we made sure that the senior management teams visited the Israel, and especially from the universities, institutes, all the faculty heads, director, deans, to have a first-hand experience about the space tech labs. How is that, we are going to have the implementation with working with the companies, and how the universities are working with the companies and the government. So this was something, the real experience we brought into the Space Tech Leadership Program. Next slide, please. So these are some of the pics from the universities where we visited, as well as from the space companies where we visited in the UK, sorry, in Israel. Next slide, please. So this was 2019, where we also had the first inaugural Space Tech Board meeting. Of course, this time it was Israel's ambassador who was present during the inaugural of this session. And of course, Professor Chaim Irshad, who is the father of Israeli space program, and Honorable Deputy Chief Minister was also present during the inaugural. And we had some global perspectives taken from this event, and this is where we really look forward in continuation of such events. Next slide, please.
Okay, we need to kind of wrap up, unfortunately. If
yeah,
you can...
so you could just take it forward, please. Next slide, please.
Yeah.
So India-UK partnership is something which is we are also focused at, and we've focusing at the cluster development for the manufacturing companies in the space tech, as well as we are making sure how we could have the bilateral transparencies and have the corridor being created, and as well as investments and knowledge transfers from the UK partnership. Next slide, please. So next slide. I've told quite a little bit of things.
I think we're going to have to kind of end it there. I mean, how many more slides have you got here?
Could you just go to the last slide, please?
Okay. Yeah. Right. Right.
So
I think
if you could put the last slide so that people could actually get the.
All right, it just ended there. Right. It just the slide ended there. Yeah, we don't really have much time for questions, unfortunately. So, okay, what do you want to say?
So it's just a WhatsApp group what we have, as well as we have. You could contact me, follow me on Twitter, as well as my email ID. You could catch up with me. Of course, Ryan and Remco would be definitely will facilitate anything got to do with 75 satellites. Thank you very much for listening, and thank you very much for your time. Thanks, Ryan.
Okay, thank you, Gautam. We don't unfortunately have time for questions there. So if anyone wants to submit questions to Gautam, then there's if you can post them in the YouTube chat there. So we have the final grid talk. So we are a little bit behind. We're about 10 minutes behind. So next up is Liam Kennedy from ISS-Above. So do you want to?
Yeah, I'll start talking. Just for grins, no, I am not in space, but you will see the video I'm sharing right now is live video from the space station as it's actually over the South Atlantic Ocean. And this really feeds into the storyline that I'm going to be sharing in just a second. Before I switch over to my presentation, let me just switch that wonderful view of space to me. I know it's not quite a good thing to switch from live video back to me, but here I am. I'm sitting in my home office in a little town called Monrovia in California, just a few miles away from Pasadena and near Los Angeles. So what I am going to be sharing, and let me just share my screen so that you can see the presentation. I'm going to be switching over to, and he says, for some reason, the actual share, oh, there it is. Okay, yeah, Zoom was hiding it. So I'm just going to be sharing my screen and going over to my presentation. Bear with me. All right, this is my presentation. And while I'm in this mode, I can't see anything on the YouTube side of things, so I can't see any comments over there. So I'm sure we'll get to those later on if I've got time. And I have a timer in front of me, so I should be able, and I've set it, I've only got 10 minutes left of my 12 minutes I allocated, so that we'd have time for questions at the end. So I'll start almost at the very beginning. You heard when we started off, there's this SpaceUp, right? It's been around. The first one I think was in 2010. I actually attended and presented at the 2011 one in Los Angeles. That was, and The 2 years later was when I came up with this presentation idea. You can see what it's called there. The Raspberry Pi for badass space stuff. Sorry for my language. And it's how I developed a working model that predicts ISS overflights. And, you know, I just showed up at this event. I'd spent a couple of weeks just working on my own sort of plans for having this little box that just lit up every time the space station was passing by. There's a history as to why I decided to do that. It's a little bit in terms of my own involvement in public outreach for astronomy and space. I used to be the president of Orange County Astronomers, a planetarium lecturer at the Griffith Observatory. And I don't know if you know this, many of you who are in this world probably do know this. It's a pretty spectacular thing when the space station is passing by when you're doing a public outreach at night and it's visible. But I wanted to take it a little bit further than that. I wanted to let everyone know when the space station was above, whenever that was passing by, because it passes you by 5 to 8 times every single day, somewhere in your sky. So I want to jump sort of right to the end. So that was the beginning. I was just a dude turning up at SpaceUp. It was literally the first public representation of this idea that I had. Well, this sort of spoiler, I guess, this is where I am now. So that little box that I developed is now in over 3,500 locations worldwide. It shows live video from cameras on the International Space Station, gives you a whole bunch of information about the International Space Station, the crew, news, and lets you know every time it passes by. And it's now in schools and science centers. I even have some lesson plans that were actually funded by a project that was funded by the ISS National Lab. They actually run the science laboratory on the International Space Station. So just to make you know how worldwide this is a slide that's showing many of the schools across the USA that have an ISS-Above, just so that you all know, get a feeling for how worldwide this is. And I'm bringing up a Google map that will show you where this is. And for some reason, it's taking a bit of a time, but hopefully it'll come up in a second. I really wanted to show you it's not just US centric. Now you may have gathered from my accent, I'm not originally from the USA, but all of my family and friends who are watching from the UK obviously know that now I have this American twang. So I'm zooming in a little bit there to show you the number of sites that are all across the USA. But if I just go over here, look at what's in the UK and Europe. There's quite a lot of locations that have ISS-Aboves across the UK, across into mainland Europe, including there's one over here that's at the DLR, the German Space Agency and stuff like that. So just wanted to quickly highlight that aspect of it, that it is indeed worldwide. So how did I take it from something that was really just related to me sharing at a SpaceUp conference to where it is now? Well, the SpaceUp conference was a real key part of me sharing something that was just this cool idea and getting feedback. And that was key to what happened next. As I'm showing on this slide here, you know, the initial idea was actually to inspire my grandchildren. I actually have 6 grandchildren, 5 of them in the UK, 1 of them over here. So my then 3-year-old grandson was my local one. I created the first versions for him and then took it over to the UK. I was persuaded to put my idea out as a Kickstarter. And that Kickstarter was funded within 3 days of me putting it out there. By the way, there was a Kickstarter for a similar device that was Arduino based, I think 2 years before I came to the market with this thing. It was going to be a cool device, but it never delivered. So that's sort of part of the history around where that's gone. So this is just showing you some of the components that were in that first Kickstarter. A little bit about the space station. Oh, look at that. All right, maybe I've got to click forward. Yeah, coffee shops and maker fair. So very shortly after the SpaceUp presentation in 2013, I went to the San Diego Mini Maker Fair. Chris Radcliffe may actually notice himself in that photo on the top right there. He's the founder of SpaceUp originally, came along and saw my display there. I had it in a coffee shop near Caltech. It's been there from like November of 2013. And it's surprising and delighting all the guests that show up from Caltech to have their lunch every day. So how did it go from launching a Kickstarter to it actually being successful was because of some rather random, magical, surprising press coverage. And some of these were through contacts that I'd had, and some of them, they just occurred. So a good example of that would be Hackaday. If any of you know, in the makerspace, they're a pretty good force in terms of representing some highly technical gadgetry that's created by makers out there. There's also an article there by PC Magazine. So all of that stuff created this. My wife is going to kill me now because she can see the photo of herself there. Yeah, I turned my home into a whole Q&A, assembly, ship system. This was after the Kickstarter was successful, and we shipped over 160 directly from that Kickstarter, but it ended up being 300 within a month or so. So that's going through that. This dude here, does everyone know who he is? Bill Nye, the science guy. He happened to purchase one of my units one day, and then for him, it turned into a little bit of an obsession, as he's got here. This was an article that was in the Wall Street Journal, and I had no idea it was going to be happening. And suddenly I had 150 orders on my website on one day, and I thought, what has gone on? So anyway, so moving forward into a little bit more of what sort of happened in the last 6 years, because that was in 2013, the Kickstarter was in 2014. Through all of this public outreach, the interesting thing is that NASA is really very interested when people in the public actually make use of something that they have created and provide a way to get that out into the public domain. So through just picking up the phone and calling people at NASA, and also at times them reaching me, I've now got connections through NASA. Note the notice there. My product is not endorsed by NASA because they don't do that, but it is used by NASA. One of my main partnerships is with the US National Lab, which is actually a separate non-profit company that runs the science lab on the International Space Station. And they've provided a whole load of access to a focus of creating education and outreach. That's the National Lab. Just a quick presentation here of a few photos of some of the public outreach that I've been involved with. So at the top left is just typically what it looks like when I set up for an exhibit of educating the public on the International Space Station. The lower left is a photo at the Bay Area Maker Fair. I've been there about 5 times. And on the lower right is one of the ones I'm particularly inspired by, and that is that the ISS-Above is often used as part of something where students get to speak live to an astronaut on the International Space Station as they pass them by. This one was actually an event that was happening at Kennedy Space Center Visitor Complex. My ISS-Above screen is showing behind there, and all of those students got to speak to us, an astronaut live. Another sort of crazy thing, this is just the most amazing project I got involved with. Yeah, I was approached by someone at NASA who wanted to have an ISS-Above connected to a set of LED lights actually that are above one of the entrances to Johnson Space Center. So in the top left there, that's my little custom little pi hat that is controlling a relay. It has a real-time clock on it. And the lower right is a very poor representation of what it looks like at night. I installed that last July at Johnson Space Center. Probably one of the cheapest projects NASA has ever had an external contract to do. but there we go. It was just so fun. Some other stuff here. Yeah, my big smiling face. I love it when I get an opportunity to share this with students. This is a bunch of students in a local school where I live in Monrovia, and an article that was posted in our local paper. It's now in lots of libraries and museums. So all over the place, a museum in Tampa, Florida over there, and another one. I didn't really get a chance to speak a lot about this, but these are one of my key connections with NASA. Who you're seeing on the left there is actually the two co-principal investigators of the project that brings live video from cameras on the space station to the ground, Carlos Fontenot and Susan Remco. And they've been great friends with me over the years in supporting what I'm doing. On the right, that's actually the Deep Space Network control room, if I call it that, in JPL in Pasadena, and my ISS-Above is in a screen on the top left of that. So, and yeah, just name dropping there. Anyone know who those dudes are? That's Scott Kelly. And on the right, that's Scott Kelly, Gennady Badalka, and Mikhail Kornienko, related to the one-year mission. Yes, I got invited to NASA to sort of go through all of that. We'll skip past that. We'll skip past that. Again, back to my most exciting thing is seeing how teachers are using this product in the classroom and having their students get inspired by it, and even their students becoming experts on the International Space Station. This is tweeted from Project Discovery there, and showing some great things there. This is more in school libraries. I can't go into a lot of detail here, but I'm now one of the education partners of the ISS National Lab. It's an organization called Space Station Explorers, and that has a lot of other organizations that have experiments on the space station. One of them there in the top right is the ExoLab from Magnitude.io experiment on the space station, also in the classroom, and students have an ISS-Above so they know when their experiment is above the school. Some more tweets, stuff there, and that's it. I know that I'm coming up to the end of my 15 minutes, and while so I know I just sort of run through there. Apologies for it. I sort of feel like it was, someone shares their holiday photos. I've sort of been on holiday for the last let me stop sharing and I'll put it back to me. So yeah, you just came along on my holiday photo show for the last 7 years. So I'm very honored to have had this opportunity to present this to you. And while we're going on here, let me just switch back to yeah, what I've now switched to, this is the ISS-Above device. It's plugged into my monitor, and this is showing you some of the information screens that are on there, news, when the next pass is, where the orbit is. And the space station is currently in darkness, so there's no live video I can show you right now. But nevertheless, in another 32 minutes is when the live video feed will be up there. So I'll just switch it back to me, and I'll take any questions if anyone would like to ask me questions.
I think we might have, well, just enough time, one quick question perhaps, but I'm sort of looking at the comments. But yeah, I think Hal says, yeah, fantastic picture sharing diversity to the students. I would already have this at Space Center. Don't see any questions, but yeah, what was it from ET Phone Gemini? I'd love to sort of follow up with you on Twitter. about doing an Instagram live with you. So okay,
Yeah,
maybe a bit of a bit more promotion there. That's great. Oh,
that's a Spaceport LA.
but why? Oh yeah, why? Yes, that's right. Yeah, Spaceport LA. Great advice. Why integrate it with? Why not release it as open source software instead to make it more accessible to anyone?
Yeah, so good question. Why didn't I just make this an open source project? Because there are certainly projects out there that allow you to track the space station. You could even do that. But, you know, my software is written in Python, and I haven't made it open source. And for me, that was a choice around how I was presenting what this was going to be and make it a supportable product. So certainly it's great for anyone to create a fully open source project, and I welcome you to do that. But this is something that in order for me to do what I've done and make it a very focused project, this is how I've done it. It may not be the right answer that people are looking for, but that's how I've you know, accomplished what I've done so far. You can actually download this the image file for ISS-Above off my website. It's not free, but you know, I'm not here to present what that's all about. But you can get it relatively pretty inexpensively, especially when you put the promo code in called SpaceUp. Sorry, I didn't mean this to be, hope that was okay. But yeah, that helps me sort of keep things running here, pays for my trips to NASA, pays for my education, outreach and things like that. You know, that's how that's done. But a good question, and I appreciate that.
So I think now we're just coming to our panel session, but thank you very much there, Liam. So there's a few questions come on YouTube, so I'll let you you know, answer some of the questions there on YouTube. But thank you for a very interesting presentation. So let me get back to my screen here. So yeah, next up we have our panel. So I think I've seen a couple of the other panelists have joined, so I hope we do have everyone here. Yeah, and Ryan, are you there?
Yeah, I'm here. So what I will say is, what I mentioned at the beginning, there are some pre-prepared questions that between both Ryans have got for the panel. But also, please put any questions in the YouTube chat section, and we'll get to those as well, and we'll put those to the panel. But I guess we should start off by letting the panel introduce themselves. So do you want to kick us off with that, Manny?
Yeah, can you hear me?
Yep. That's great.
Great. Hi, everyone. My name is Manny Shah. I'm head of analytics at Bright Space and Technology. And so basically, Bright is an analytic consulting company. We do everything from market analysis, technology forecasting, policy analysis, things like that. So really excited to be on this panel. Thank you for having me. And yeah.
That's great. Next thing, yeah, we have Sue O'Hare. They're from the ESABIC UK.
Hello, everyone. My name's Sue O'Hare, and I'm the operations manager of the European Space Agency Business Incubation Centre United Kingdom, which is rather a mouthful, so we call it the ESABIC UK. We're one of 21 ESABICs across Europe, and our mission is to support early stage space-related companies with technical and business support, access to specialist facilities and equipment, grant funding, networking events, and office accommodation. This is my first SpaceUp, so thank you very much for inviting me. I'm delighted to be here.
Happy to have you. So next, Melissa, sorry.
Hi, everybody. First off, thanks, guys, for inviting me. I'm really excited for our discussion. Melissa Thorpe from Spaceport Cornwall. So I'm head of engagement down here in Cornwall. And we are the horizontal launch site for Virgin Orbit here in the UK as part of the UK launch program with UK Space Agency. So it's a consortium made up of Cornwall Council, Goonhilly Air Station, and Virgin Orbit. And we're basically a civilian operational airport at the minute, and we're fully integrating space launch into our operations. So quite a different model for launch. and we're looking to launch, well, hopefully by the end of next year, but we'll talk about it maybe in the panel, but maybe early 22 now.
And finally, we have Kartik from SatSearch.
Hi, yeah, I'm Kartik. I'm one of the co-founders at SatSearch. We are actually an ESA big company, not based in the UK, but based in Noordwijk in the Netherlands, right opposite the gates of ESTEC. And we're building an online marketplace for the space industry, basically Amazon for space engineers.
Fantastic. So there we've got a sort of brief introduction from everyone. So, I mean, the main overall question is, how will COVID-19 impact the space industry? And I think we've already sort of seen some of the effects, most notably with OneWeb, but then also some of the operations at ESA were paused. I think there's been some effects there, and of course there's a space technology side that's also being currently there's efforts to help with the actual tackling of COVID-19 monitoring with Earth observation. But here we're looking specifically at the impact on the industry. So as a broad overview, we have Manny there who's looking at the report side of looking at the wider industry, Sue there for the startups, and then Spaceport Con was a wider industry, and Kartik is more the marketplace really for space. So I mean, maybe if it's okay, if I start with Victor Manny. So Manny, you at Brightspace, you produce different reports, and I suppose we've seen quite a lot of growth in the space industry over particularly the last few years. I suppose we don't have maybe tea leaves in a cup to know exactly the future, but I don't know already if you're managing to kind of see the effects of this impact of COVID-19 and already like some of the early kind of effects.
Yeah, sure. So we're starting to see some impact, right? Like as you mentioned, OneWeb going bankrupt, but I must say that, you know, to a lot of people that wasn't very surprising. It kind of large telecom constellations are notoriously expensive endeavors, right? And you need to have a minimum number of satellites in orbit to be able to provide a service. So the OneWeb had about 10% of their constellation, probably insufficient to provide any kind of service to customers. So you know, not being able to generate revenues and then, you know, having to spend billions of dollars to have this constellation up, I think that's quite an extremely challenging endeavor. So with that, historically, about more than half of all venture investment in the last 5 years has gone to SpaceX and OneWeb. So with OneWeb out, there isn't any other kind of visible company that you know will take its place in terms of publicly announcing large amounts of capital like that. So yeah, it's a really challenging environment, and you know, potentially some other knock-on effects around you know, aerospace is clearly being affected. So the supply chain and how that might be a bottleneck. There's lots of companies in the lower tiers who possibly are largely you know, contributing to aviation and providing parts and services to aerospace firms. And then also they're providing services to space companies. So there's some overlaps in the supply chains, and you know, if aerospace is being impacted quite significantly, then imagine there could be a residual effect on the space industry. But yeah, it's a bit too early to see what exactly that might
be. Yeah, and Ryan, do you want to come in with something?
Yeah, sure. So do you think that, which is open to anyone who wants to answer it, nobody in particular, do you think there's going to be a long-term change in the focus of the space industry, or sort of yeah, basically just a change in the focus of the space industry as a result of COVID-19.
Is that to me or?
Just generally to any of the panelists that want to answer.
I can have a stab at that. The kind of an immediate change is obviously investor appetite in investing in high risk projects. So the space industry saw a substantial rise in venture investment over the last several years. And venture investing is known for being risk tolerant. So will that continue? It's challenging to see that, and a lot of these investors are probably going to want to ensure that the companies that they've already invested in, and so their portfolio companies, are able to withstand the current situation and continue to invest in them rather than investing in direct a new companies. So yeah, that's kind of an immediate thing that comes to mind.
There's quite a few questions coming from YouTube, which I guess we'll come to in a few moments, but maybe I can sort of pick up on the supply chain aspect that you mentioned there, Manny. So it's really, I guess for Kartik, you look at the like a marketplace for space, you said Amazon for space. Have you already seen some effects there within your platform? And is there any particular area, like I guess sub area of space where you're seeing these effects already kind of taking effect there, like maybe upstream versus downstream, or kind of some parts there?
Yeah, I think it's a really interesting question, because you do kind of have this stark difference between the downstream part of the value chain and the upstream part of the value chain. I think in the upstream bit where we've done most of our recent work, what you see is it's kind of a double-edged sword. On the one hand, the industry is somewhat resilient to these external shocks for the very fact that we aren't really truly commercial yet. So in a lot of ways, companies that are aiming to be commercial are still largely dependent on government funding, on subsidies. And so in some sense, it's paying dividends to have that construction within the marketplace, because those are often multi-year R&D projects. What is kind of difficult in that is where you're dealing with hardware and you have a factory line, a production process in which you need people there. That's of course slowed down, if not completely stopped in many cases. So there is in some sense a little bit of resiliency on that side. On the other side though, what we've noticed is that there is not a great deal of diversification of the customer base for most companies, especially in sort of the small medium enterprise category. And what that means is the impact of, for instance, a company like OneWeb not being able to see through what their plans are has a very strong knock-on effect through the supply chain. So what you see is companies looking to diversify, which in some sense means in the short term, we might actually end up with a cascading set of casualties, companies not being able to pull through because of credit crunch, lack of liquidity, things like that. But on the other hand, it also means that companies are forced now to do things that are probably going to stand them in good stead if they make it through the crisis. So I think, yeah, there's both pluses and minuses, and the devil really is in the details. What we have noticed is that deals are still getting done, procurement is still happening, but it has a necessary impact on things like lead time. You see also launches, for instance, slipping. So you have this very interesting problem of how all of that cascades into companies being able to keep the lights on, keep their employees paid. And I think this crisis is a true test of the core robustness of businesses in the space industry. And I think, yeah, that's what it's going to teach us all a lesson in things like unit economics and understanding sales, deal flow, and things like that. So from our side, we've seen a lot of interesting things happen. We've also done a little bit of a sentiment survey, and you see there's also mixed responses. There's largely negativity at the moment on the upstream side, but it's mixed with little pangs of positivity, I would say. Anyway, I'm happy to share more details of that if that comes up as well.
Sure. Ryan, do you have a question there?
Yeah, I've got a question specifically for Sue, if that's all right. Just wondered if you've seen any effect or negative or positive on startups. So from the startup perspective, how's COVID-19 impacting them?
Yes, okay. So the ESA-BIC in the UK has been going since late 2010, and we've supported 85 companies during that time, of which about 90% are still active. So that provides us with a reasonable sample, I think, to get an idea of what's happening from. And there has been a range of effects, I mean, much as Kartik was suggesting there. So some of our companies have seen their market dry up overnight. I should have said that actually the majority of our companies are downstream applications, because that was the initial focus of the ESA-BIC. So it's only more recently that we have upstream companies. So some of the downstream applications have dried up overnight. So for instance, we had one company that was doing shared taxi rides for commuters. So obviously the demand for that fell through the floor. But on the other hand, some companies have actually seen their opportunities grow. So we have one company which is detecting diseases in livestock, and actually most of the coronaviruses originate from livestock. So they're seeing a huge amount of interest. Some of them have decided to occupy themselves for the moment by using their facilities to support the COVID-19 effort. So we've got a couple of companies who are 3D printing visors for PPE. And then we've got quite a few who've actually seen the opportunity to pivot or diversify into a different market and apply the technology that they were developing in new areas. So probably the best known example of that at the moment is our company Lantern, which has developed a social distancing app called Crowdless, available on the App Store. Sorry for the advert. They're using the techniques that they developed to help international workers in conflict zones navigate safely, and they're now applying that to helping you to navigate safely through the supermarkets. So that's a really good example of the ingenuity that startups are typical. That is the typical way they respond to challenges, and it's great to see that when it happens.
Maybe next we can turn to Melissa. So you're the head of engagement there at Spaceport Cornwall. Have you seen some effects there? For instance, Virgin Orbit is closely involved there in Spaceport Cornwall, and I think it recently had a launch. Was it Cosmic Girl? But then have the timelines sort of shifted there? I think you hinted at something at the beginning.
Yeah, so Virgin Orbit are in a pretty good place, actually. They were deemed about almost 2 months ago as an essential service by the White House, and that was mainly because of what their payload is meant to be for the first commercial launch. So they are, still programming away to time over there in California, and they did have their last kind of test launch, their final dress rehearsal, as they called it, a few weeks ago, which was successful. And that means that they're planning for the first commercial launch imminently. So we're hoping within the next few weeks that we'll see their first commercial launch. So on that side of things, that's great, because as soon as the technology is proven over in the US, will be their first kind of shift outside of the US here in the UK. So they can kind of start looking at operations here in the UK. However, as I kind of mentioned in my intro, we might be seeing some delays in a few areas. The first being we were meant to be holding some local supplier days in Bristol and down here in Cornwall as part of the UK Space Agency program. The Virgin team were due to come over and kind of have a speed dating round with some of the tier 1 and tier 2 and tier 3 supply chain in the UK, part of the TGOS, so the transportable ground operation systems. We had to cancel that because that was just when COVID was kicking off. So we're still looking at how we do that virtually, because that is something that we do need to fulfill here in the UK. So there's a bit of a delay there with the supply chain, but that's something we're hoping to remedy quite soon. And then, the secondary legislation for spaceflight in the UK is the other thing that we might have a bit of a delay on. We were on the phone with UK Space Agency earlier today, and they're working as hard as they can to look at getting that through Parliament still. But obviously, with everything else going on, you know, the health of the country and the world need to come first. So we completely understand, but we're looking at potentially a few months delay. We were hoping to launch October next year for the first time here in the UK, but that's probably going to shift to early 22. But that's, you know, that's not bad, thinking there might just be a few months delay to that. So yeah, obviously
Ryan,
watching it closely.
Yeah.
Yeah. Do you have any other questions?
Well, I think we should take it to the comment section, to be honest, because there's lots of interesting questions there. So just picking one at random. So there's one here from, I'm trying to say the username now, Xphone Gimini. Do you think there'll be... There we go. That. Do you think there'll be less venture capital in new space startups in the near future due to the pandemic?
So maybe for Manny, if maybe I'm just thinking.
I think
Manny.
Melissa was trying to say something, but it was mute.
Oh,
but
right.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, I kind of alluded to it earlier in terms of the impact on investor appetite. It seems there's at least a pause on any new major large deals. You know, the investors are probably going to focus on their existing portfolio companies rather than new opportunities. But that's not to say they're not. They are keeping an eye out for any potential distressed assets that, you know, they might want to pick up. So yeah, it's an evolving issue, and you know there's potential deals that, you know, might have been. Now might be a better time to make than before, but others, I think, more generally, the business, the companies where there's no clear, you know, business model and perhaps no revenue generation, that they might struggle to raise capital.
There were some figures out from Bohurst, the analyst, today, actually, looking at the last week, which showed that the investment that had gone into early stage startups in the last week was actually 34% up on last year, but the number of deals was right down. And that, I think, exactly reflects what Manny's been saying about investors putting their money into their existing companies rather than looking for new ones to support.
I think somebody's asked about the James Webb Space Telescope, but I don't know if anyone knows anything about that. So I guess more generally the sort of hardware development of I think you touched on Kartik, but yeah, I think a lot of things have been sort of delayed there. But can the space industry be pandemic proof for the future? If so, how? Oh, interesting question. We're all getting used to these Zoom calls and virtual meetings and everything. So does anyone want to pick that up? Maybe Kartik?
Some thoughts on that. I think there are a number of things that work in favor of the space industry. You know, we are a very international community, also used to working under pretty trying circumstances, whether it is economic and financial, or, you know, with regards to the technical side of things. So in that sense, you know, there is a degree of resiliency built into just the way the industry has had to mold itself, you know, from where it started. Where I think that there's probably an opportunity to improve that is really on kind of the financial soundness of companies within the sector. I think that there is this question of, for instance, what you do when you don't have liquidity. So when you don't have cash in the bank to pay your bills, to pay employees and things like that. And I think the space industry, being a high capital expenditure business with often money tied up in various procurement deals, you know, and invoices that need to be paid, there's perhaps some sort of importance that needs to be placed on the non-technical side of running a business and understanding how to mitigate for external shocks or even predict forward, what the impact is going to be on your business. I think many companies are doing this. I just think that that's where kind of the improved robustness can come from. Is largely, I think technical prowess isn't really where the central question lies in this sector, but it's rather about how you navigate the fact that ultimately, if you're a business, you've got money coming in, money going out. And when you're dealing with the kind of timescales that we are in the space industry, very short, sharp shocks that happen like this can have a dramatic impact. And finding a way to smoothen that out, perhaps by thinking about reserves, thinking about buffers in the system, that's perhaps the way forward. But ultimately, the difficulty with that as well is we are in an increasingly open marketplace that's competitive. So you have to kind of trade off the ability to build those buffers versus the execution speed and excellence that you need to beat off competition in the market. So I think that's really a game that has to be played, and something that we'll learn out of this crisis.
I've got a question here from Anushka, so maybe I'll put this to Sue. You gave the example of Lantern, which is a fantastic sort of pivot, but Anushka asked, what are the best pivots you've seen so far? So maybe other than the Lantern, what else have you sort of seen there?
Yeah, sure. So we've got a couple of other examples which are quite nice. So we've got a company called Archangel Imaging, which usually uses high-resolution cameras and drones and other high-altitude vehicles for large-scale monitoring of remote areas at sea. So they're looking to develop fever detection cameras, which is quite a nice one. Also, one called Satavia, which has a software platform that's normally used to assess the likely impact of atmospheric pollutants on aircraft engines. They've used their expertise to developing a forecasting model for COVID-19. And they've firstly been using that to estimate ventilator requirements to support the Ventilator Challenge Consortium in the UK. But they're now next going to incorporate this into their platform so that they can show the progression of COVID-19 against environmental and climatic conditions and the different policies that countries have applied to understand whether there will be a resurgence of the virus later in the year and when the air industry might be able to restart. So that's not exactly pivoting, but it's sort of pivoting out and then back in again, if you like, which is quite neat.
Just realizing the time here, so I mean, maybe we just manage one more question. So let's see, we've got, I think, Balaji here saying, as companies are moving more remote and distributed working post-corona, do you think distributed working employees in remote places and not in one location will aid the space industry in a post-corona world? So I don't know who wants to sort of answer that one. Yeah.
I mean, I can share maybe some brief thoughts on. Again, I think we are a pretty international community, so a lot of companies do have offices in various countries. So I think there's some degree of understanding on how to work in a distributed fashion, perhaps not in a fully remote way as we're being forced to do now. Ultimately, though, especially if you're talking about the upstream part of the market, there's hardware involved. And so, you're going to have some degree of co-location for production facilities and things like that. There is this question of automation with manufacturing, assembly, integration, but that requires volumes that we've not yet quite achieved in the market. So I think that, post this, the industry will probably actually just continue as is, because many people already kind of commute and work in different places and things like that. And I think the industry perhaps actually has an opportunity on the other side, which is looking at how the downstream part of the sector can serve connectivity, for instance, in remote locations, and help to bridge the gaps that exist to allow other sectors to operate in a more distributed fashion. So perhaps it's actually more of an opportunity rather than even a primary challenge for the industry.
Thank you very much.
Very interesting.
I think we're going to have to end it there because, we are already a little bit behind schedule, but I want to thank our panelists. their time this evening here in the UK. And we do have a, oh, I'm just advancing ahead. We do have a Slido. Okay. We have a Slido link, which is sli.do/SpaceUp Live. We'll put the link in the YouTube chat. But we do have an upcoming interactive discussion and Q&A. So I don't know how many of our panelists are sort of able to sort of stick around, but that will be one of the last things there. So any other questions, we'll try to pick up further questions there. But thank you. So next up, we have our next lot of T-5s. So, so Ryan, if I
yeah. So our next T-5 is from Damien. So while Ryan just gets your slides up, do you want to just introduce yourself really quickly?
Okay. Hello everyone. So I'm Damien Hartmann. So you don't plan to broadcast my 60 seconds to learn video then?
Oh no, we're going to do that at the end. Yeah.
At the end.
Okay. Yeah. This was your T-5. So.
Okay then. Okay, because I was partly presenting myself in my 60 seconds to learn. But in any way, so it's gone. I can go.
Yep. Go.
Okay. So hello, my name is Damien Hartmann, and I am a member of the Open Space Makers Association. So the French space agency CNES has given us the mission of developing the Federation Initiative. The Federation Initiative was born within CNES, where Professor Jacques Blamont proposed a new approach to open up the world of space to a public as wide as possible, to enable everyone to contribute directly to the design and manufacture of the space infrastructure of the future. The mission of the Open Space Makers Volunteer Association is to carry the message that everyone is invited to get involved in building space hardware in open source and to provide the necessary tools and support so that anyone can actually get started. Our action is based on 4 pillars: a federation charter, a web platform which provides teams with a set of collaboration tools, the creation of a network, and material, financial, and skill support to projects. We often use one sentence to sum up what federation in the end is all about. The only thing that stands between you today and you sending a rover to Mars tomorrow is the energy and passion you are ready to give to projects. All the rest, federation will provide. Open source is at the heart of the Federation Charter. It is both a guarantee of sustainability and a protection of the individual volunteer efforts that are put into Federation projects. Today, our online platform offers most tools needed to lead a collaborative project with a distributed team. So all these tools are open source, secured, hosted on our own secure servers with our own terms of use and backup tools. So Federation projects are led remotely, but they are also led physically in Fab Labs. So if you do not know about Fab Labs, these are local community-based workshops open to anyone willing to make and learn. So it goes from electronics to plastic arts and from sewing to machining. The perfect places to convert online discussions and CAD files into actual prototypes. And so one of the key actions we did is to communicate to Fab Labs all over France about Federation and all about the possibilities we offer. And of course, now you may wonder what kind of projects are actually led in Federation. One of them is a rocket stage electrical separation system. It was originally designed for an experimental rocket developed at the Electro Lab Space in Nanterre, and the CAD files were published on the Federation platform. It was then taken over at the Fab Lab of Château-Thierry, so in northern France, who found it while searching for a similar system on the web. They produced one prototype and tested it on a mini rocket, and now the second version is in the process of design finalization, and it will be tested in another mini rocket in late 2020. Is it possible to generate a radiation source to test the resistance of components of the shelves to space conditions in a Fab Lab? It's actually too dangerous, but an idea that came out of it to use one of the radiation sources, dense plasma focalization, to create an engine for CubeSat. We have also initiated a partnership with ArianeWorks, so some subsystems of THEMIS, a reusable stage demonstrator, are under a THEMIS Open umbrella project, and team members are now working on concepts for this brick in close contact with Ariane Group and CNES. Mars Proof was initially launched by a Mars Society member. Today, more than 20 project members work on a dryer, electrolyzer chamber to reproduce Martian conditions, contributors with backgrounds very large, in different industries. BGC is a modular onboard computer for launchers and satellites. It is the first project to receive financial support from Federation. 1,000 euros were attributed to it for building the first 2 prototypes. The funding process is very decision and fair, as fair and transparent as possible. Last but not least, the AV team works on a liquid metalox engine. So I guess that's pretty self-explaining. You may have made the link between these last 2 projects and the open source foundation of Federation. And indeed, with some of the projects, we have reached the limits of open source. And so that's why we're working very extensively with project owners and authorities to create the legal framework. I am also sure you have noticed that currently the whole platform is in French, the legal framework is based in France, and the large majority of contributors are French. It's not meant to stay so, and we aim to reach 7.5 billion people. However, to achieve that, we will need both a technical platform and a project organization methodology that helps us deal with multi-language exchanges, and not just in English. If you do it in English, you exclude 80% of humanity which does not speak English. And it would be a contradiction to our core value of inclusion. So as you see, we have many challenges ahead of us. So we need you, and really all of you. If you speak French, then you should right now join our Launch Federation projects. And if you do not speak French, join our multilingual task force. And all together, we will reach Proxima Centauri and beyond. Thank you.
That was fantastic. Thank you very much. Up next, we've got Eldridge. And while Ryan gets the slides, I'll just remind everybody that if you want to ask questions for any of these T-5s, drop them in the YouTube comments, and we'll get to them at the end of this block of 4 talks. But thank you again, Damien, and over to Eldridge to introduce yourself.
Just a moment. Eldridge?
Yes. Hello, everyone. So I'm Eldridge DeMello. I'm aerospace project management, and I'm a senior specialist to ground control in a mission control center. My presentation tonight will be on why do we need space project management and the main constraints of it. Why do we need it? Well, project management is important because it ensures what is being delivered in a project is right and has value. Every client has a strategic goal, and the project that we do for them have to achieve those goals. Next slide, please. Yeah. So the trend that I have been noticing lately in the industry, and because I'm based in Toulouse right now, is that ever more engineers are being equipped with project management skills because they are very important. NASA, for example, is considered a leader in project and program management because the diverse set of engineering, science, and space exploration missions, they require long-term planning and coordination among multiple stakeholder groups, programs, and project offices. As space missions become increasingly international and collaborative, we will continue to rely on project management expertise and pragmatic oversight skills to ensure a continued success on complex missions. So the first constraint is budget. I like to join budget with resources because the same way we need to find financial sponsoring for our mission, you also need infrastructures, expertise, and technology. Acquiring this may differ because you may have a mission that is military, commercial, or scientific mission. So when we send colonists to Mars or the moon, management will be extremely important because resources will be limited and they will have to be properly managed. For the United States, China, Russia, and France, they represent the top 5 national space programs. And the United States budget is nearly $41 billion, but it's been lowering. So on the project risk management, risks are always present in every project. But what are risks? Risks are potential problems that have undesired consequences. How do we measure them? They are measured by the probability of it occurring and the severity of its consequences. Some risks can be acceptable if the magnitude is less than a given threshold, but how do we deal with them? We deal with risks but by doing risk prevention, risk reduction, and risk mitigation. So this is about risk. The next one is the quality management. This is a big constraint because project quality is important and determines the success or duration of your mission. I would like to share with you guys a detail. The small satellite industry has a failure rate of 40%. And that's after you remove the 60% launch failure rate. If you exclude the on-orbit servicing solutions that are going to be introduced, you have to remember that once you launch your mission, you can't really fix it or service it. We have to ensure project quality on Earth. That's why project management is very important, because also of project management quality. The next point is on operations management. Space project management transcends the design, manufacturing, and launching phase. During operations phase, management is still very important. I would like to share with you guys about space traffic management. Space is getting crowded. Today, we can track more than 20,000 artificial objects that orbit Earth, including over 1,500 working satellites and a plethora of expired spacecraft, used boosters, and other debris. Keeping up with space traffic is becoming more challenging. Satellites are getting smaller and cheaper to launch. The potential for collisions, accidents, misunderstanding, and conflicts is growing. The space mission operators and managers have to improve their skills and knowledge on space objects and create accurate warning of close approaches. So thank you very much, and that's my presentation for space management.
That's fantastic. Thank you very much, Eldridge. So next up, we've got Hamid, who will give us a talk on Boost Up Group. Just while Ryan changes the slides over, just remind everybody, you can ask your questions in the YouTube comment section, and we'll get to them after this block of T-5 talks. Thank you again, Eldridge. That was very good.
Can you hear me?
Yep.
Hello. Yep. So I can start with like a little introduction about myself. I'm Hamid. I'm CEO and founder of Group. And today I will talk about a new approach to new space market, which it will include the first new space search engine. Boost Up Group basically is a space startup which is working on a space consultancy, but the method that we are using is quite different from the traditional consultancy methods. We are using data, and we try to offer efficient solution based on the data that we have from the market. We are the only international company, only Wi-Fi company in China working in Chinese space local market, and we are working sort of as a bridge between the companies who are now working in Chinese space market and they want to go out of the China, and also for the other companies when they want to enter to the Chinese market as well. So this connection is something that we use the data that we have, and we are considering some issues about the market that I will explain later. Can you advance the slide? Sure. First, I want to talk about a little bit about the issues that we are considering about the new space market. First of all, I can say that commercial space market, considering the space startups, it's not a mature market. It needs still a huge amount of innovation in the market to go further. And also the market is not stabilized based on what the clients and also what the suppliers are providing. So there is no balance between these two. So this market is like changing, and it's quite a new market. But two main issues that in Boost Up that we are thinking about and we consider it as a challenges that we want to change is like first from the connection side, which lack of proper connection for project execution inside the space market is one deal. And the other part is like the information flow, which is not sufficient. This lack of connection, it means like the network inside the space startup ecosystem, it's not efficient enough to for the space startups to understand which companies are the best partners for them to execute. Space startups usually they have a small team, so they need these connections that they can connect to them, and they push further the execution of their project. The information flow is also the main channel of the websites that these new space companies are providing. It's not enough. With the companies that we talked over the last year, what we understood from the website and what they presented from themselves is quite different from the real capabilities that they have. And these information, which is necessary for other parties in the market, are not sufficient enough to decide how they can start this collaboration inside the market. And the way that Boost Up wants to fix these issues is trying to boost this interconnection inside the new space ecosystem to push forward to have more space projects having been done inside the commercial side. Please advance the slide. How we try to fix these two main issues, we are working on something that we consider as the main product of BoostUp Group, and this product is the main space startup database that we have collected from commercial space market globally. BoostUp Group has the largest and most comprehensive commercial space database. This database has few characteristics which makes it unique compared to the other ones. First one, it's like totally technical information collected from these space-related companies. And we didn't limit the information that we collected from this company based on the specific region or country. So it's a global database. Considering the experts working in these companies are also one important deal, because these companies having like the experts working on this project, and at the same time they have these decision makers inside these companies who are the main points of like starting this collaboration and expanding what they are doing. The details of the product and services of all these companies are also important. We collected the detailed information of the capabilities of these companies based on the product that they already have, if it's on the earlier stage, if already have the flight heritage, and if they provide a service, what is the background of those services, and collected information are sorted in the categorized version. That this categorized information are useful to have like to make a decision based on those information. Because if we have the raw information about the market, it's very difficult to go through that database and collect that. We use AI to connect the needs of the companies inside the market and connect it to the capabilities of the company. So you can see on the graph, we have like a sample of a few companies that we already use in BoostUp to see how the algorithm works. So what we did, we tried to check like if a specific company needs like a specific technology field, which is the best partner inside the market, so they can try to connect with them. Majority of these companies, maybe they are not aware of each other. So these inner connection can be defined and be used in the way that companies go and approach each other and try to further whatever they are doing. The BoostUp solution, it's like basically can be reached through our website. So what we have, it's the first new space search engine. Whenever you want to search over the detail of a specific technical part, if you go even in the Google, it's difficult because Google gives you like so many information which are not really useful for the technical execution of the project. So the new space search engine that we have, you can put the keyword of your project. Imagine you want to design a satellite, and what we give as a result, it's the list of the companies who are capable of working in that specific technology field. So whatever you have, it's like you can search it simply and you can get the list and you can start to contact them, or you can contact BoostUp to provide that connection point for you to go further. For the information flow part, which is like also the problem, it's like we have this news archive which we daily update it based on whatever it's the progress of the market, and we use this information to give insights in the way that, for example, the one that we already published about COVID-19 and the impacts. And the last part, it's like whatever we are providing in BoostUp, we try to make it in the way that is easy and accessible wherever you are and whenever you want to use it. So we have our own application, all the functions that I explained, the new space search engine, the projects that we have from the companies that you can directly apply to those, the news, the event, and also at the same time, the insights that we put about whatever happening in the market, you can access it from our app. You can easily find it on Google. And also you can reach us on the social media as well. I think that's the end of my presentation. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Hamid. That was really interesting. So now we've got our last T-5 in this block by Marco. So while Ryan just sets that up, Marco, do you want to just introduce yourself quickly while Ryan gets your slides?
Hello, everyone. I'm Marco Romero from Angola, a space system engineer and satellite operator as a ballistic and navigation support of geostationary satellites. And I will just share a little bit of what I've been done in terms of not the operational part and the scientific, but in terms of education in outreach, because yeah, it's just a little bit of what I think that is the base and the boost to inspire and give opportunities to next generation. If you go to the next slide, you'll see that I'll just a lot of people just have issues and are always complaining about not having space in two sense of the word, and they don't know what to do, how to do, when to do, and when gain this opportunity about space. I'll just share a little bit of my example. I came from aeronautics in Portugal, and even before that, when I was learning about, for example, the Newton laws, it will be easier if I get like the opportunity to have one rocket, play with it, and then receive the information about or the teaching about physics. And if we can go back, sorry.
It's automated forward.
Okay. If you, I don't know if you can go. Yeah, here you can see exactly, or do you mind did I share my screen because it's passing?
It's not, well, it advances. This is part of the T-5, so I mean,
okay.
I can go back
Ryan. It will be easier now to control.
Yeah, I mean, okay, where do you want to go?
Or I can use this, but if it's passing automatically, I can use mine, but that's okay.
Well, it's meant to. This is part of the T-5. It's meant to advance automatically.
Okay. What do you prefer?
Okay.
Yeah. Okay. We, as I was telling, people just need to know that they don't need to go outside to the other space to get knowledge and to explore space. If I ask you some of those pictures here, where is Mars and where is Moon and where is the Angola Namib Desert and the Mauritania, probably some of you just get a little bit confused about that. And we are trying to study and set up possibilities to develop analog missions to train, to give STEM and to make STEM, to take STEM to other dimension. And there are several events that now they are taking place virtually. Even those analogs, they are trying to make it happen virtually. If we go to the next slide, we'll just see some of the things that we've been done, because people know what to do, where to go, and but how to develop, what didactic tools they have. No matter, I'll just give you some examples here of what have been done on the previous slide in terms of developing comic books to teach kids about space, podcasts, videos with your own phone, and you can motivate. This is my path. It's not a formula, but I start just draft with the basic steps, with what I have, with my passion, with some support, and I just found people that want to learn. And with those people, I just create contents enough so I can bring events, send them to the events, and putting all the things together with all that I have created until now. And I just develop all those things without complaining about that. Yeah, it's a little bit what I was trying to share of what you can do. A lot of the steps that I've made and the step up that I made with some of the companies and projects that were presented here. And yeah, a little bit messy in terms of presentation, but I think you got an idea. And if you want to understand more and ask questions, it will be easier to focus on one specific slide.
Oh, thank you. I know it's your first ever talk from Angola, so no worries. It's really brilliant to sort of hear that. So yeah, so I guess
I haven't actually seen any questions in the comments relating to these 4 T-5 talks. So what I would suggest is if we move on with the program, and if you've got any questions, just put them in the comments anyway, and I'm sure the presenters would answer them there. So next on the agenda is the Q&A session, which we have got on Slido. So if I just present my screen quickly, Ryan, if you could stop presenting 2 seconds, I will go ahead and present. Here we go. So there's a few questions. Pavlo, are you still on the call?
Can you see me?
Oh yeah.
Yep. Wonderful.
Yep.
So I've got a question for Pavlo. What materials is the Asagumo made out of? Since the robot is quite small, are you using any nanomaterials in the sensors?
Yes, I mean, I believe there is, I mean, nanomaterials is more or less a buzzword, but in terms of new materials, yes, we're trying to use new materials. I mean, there is quite a lot of aluminum, but we're also looking at the potential to use a more modern technology such as carbon. But we have to be aware if we use new materials that there is a potential of gas emission. So they have to be degassed, and there is still potential of some gas emissions. So especially with launches, we always kind of fill in the questionnaire about that. So we have to be careful about the gas profile and also if they can sustain the temperatures. But obviously we are looking into it and we're trying to use some interesting new materials. So if there are some ideas, we're more than welcome to kind of to listen. Please email us.
Awesome, thank you for that, Pavlo. So question for Sajjad now. Is it difficult to have resources as you want, as Iran is quite limited by restrictions?
I should say that yes, it is not easy, and so many times we use the inner and in-house resources instead, or develop the technology by ourselves. But about the information, I don't get what information is going to, or he or she is going.
Quite get that either.
About the information, is it if it is about the technology? Yes, it is hard to get. But about the applications, no, we can get through the websites or resources that anyone can get.
Okay. Thank you for that, Sajjad. So this next question is something about Grow Mars. I'm not. Did somebody talk about Grow Mars today? Don't think they did.
There was someone. Was it Chris? Were we talking about? Was it Humanity Mars? Are you still on the call? Oh, did he have to leave? Yeah. I think. Oh, Chris. Oh. I'm on mute. Chris is, I don't know if Chris, you were talking about Mars Initiative. I don't know if that's something.
So I did. Grow Mars is a different entity. I've been chatting with the person that runs it, so I think they're on the call, but I don't know that they did a presentation.
No. Okay. Yeah.
So I guess we'll skip over that one for now. If we've got time, we'll go back to it. But I guess this one's open to anybody who's on the call who wants to speak up. But what's the most exciting upcoming space mission?
SpaceX Demo 2, crew demo.
Yes, I happen to agree with that one. Anybody else got any others?
Mars 2020 launching in July.
Okay, awesome. So if we go down, so if established space-based services are more automated and satellites keep coming around due in their orbits, will there be more resilient to pandemics? Again, I'm guessing that one's open to anybody who's got an opinion on that one.
Geoff here. Well, that was actually my question.
Okay.
But no, I was just wondering, I mean, it's something when we set services up for, you know, whatever it is, land information or air quality, I'd be interested to know if anyone has actually thought about the pandemic as a risk factor or as a, you know, as an opportunity or something to consider when we are developing services. So I'm wondering after this has all happened, whether we should go back and look at the services we have in place already and any future services, and to kind of score them somehow against how susceptible or, you know, they are to pandemics or resilient, and whether they can keep operating in extreme circumstances.
Interesting. Has anyone got any opinions on that or thoughts? I mean, personally, I'd imagine they will, but then I reckon in a decade's time it will become lax. People forget about it again, right? People have got a short memory. Anybody else got any ideas or thoughts on that?
I would just like to add something on what Geoff just said. When we implement space projects, and you know, the European Commission has Galileo, EGNOS, and Copernicus, and is working on SSA and GovSatcom and so on. So when we implement the space programs, and this is common also to other projects in other places in the world, you need to do a security assessment. So you need to build all different type of scenarios and try to make the system, as all the infrastructure and all the operations, as resilient as possible and resistant also. I don't know the details, it's classified information, but I can imagine that it would be very difficult when you are planning a project for the future to think that everyone will stay at home because of a virus that comes from nature and suddenly attacks everyone. It is true that we already had some experience in the past in some regions in the world related to coronavirus. So of course, the systems are implemented in a way that operations can continue. When we are speaking about Galileo, EGNOS, and Copernicus, that is the projects that I know best, I know that this exists. We have the operations running 24/7 with no interruption. And we made sure that everyone is still able to connect and the security needs are met and so on and so on. But I can imagine that smaller projects or startups or companies, this might have been a difficult situation. And I don't think everyone was able to adapt quick enough to the situation to keep their business running. So of course, we also learn from what we are experiencing. So for sure, in the future, there will be a scenario on the evaluation on, imagine that we all need to stay at home. What happens after that?
Yeah, that makes sense. Thank you very much. I think we are sort of running out of time now. So I guess, should we take one more question or wrap up, Ryan? What do you think?
Maybe there's time just for one more short question.
Okay, so I guess we'll just go down in the list in order. So Remco posted this one, copied it from YouTube. It's for Hamid. Hamid, are you still with us?
Yeah, I'm still here.
Cool. Could you quickly share some of your experiences in a new space environment in China, in terms of regulations and funding specifically?
Basically, I think the trickiest part to work with the Chinese companies inside the space sector, it's these regulations, because nowadays they are opening, the government is supporting a lot of the commercial side to open these doors to have like active commercial space sector in China. But the regulations are still tricky. For example, if I want to give a short example, we had a customer in Europe which wanted to use the ground stations in China, but the regulation didn't allow. But the Chinese company providing the ground station network went and had another ground station in Pacific Ocean, so they could give like services to foreigner clients. For the launch side also, it's a bit tricky. Some of them, they cannot, like the commercial launch companies, they cannot still get like the payloads from out of China, but some of them, they didn't follow the government and they didn't become sort of indirect support of the government, so they are more open. From the funding side, also China, I think it's the only country which the space sector is like pushing a lot, and even the pandemic and COVID-19 didn't affect it that much, because we heard like hundreds of millions of dollars investment in a couple of new companies. Even in last week, I think if we check last 2 weeks, it was more than $200-300 million investment in a couple of companies. So I think the funding part is like progressing a lot, and even they are approaching to get investment from out of China. But the regulation, it depends on a specific project that they want to do. It's like the clients, when they approach Boost Up, we need to check exactly what they want to do, and the regulation, how does it allow them from any part of the market, like from launch, designing the satellite, or anything else.
That's brilliant. Thank you very much, Hamid. So I guess we should wrap up now. This has been an absolutely amazing first SpaceUp Live. I mean, we had over 180 people on the stream at one point, and if you made it this far, then congratulations. It's been a long but very interesting evening. So thank you all for coming very much. Again, share your experiences on social media, hashtag SpaceUp Live. And obviously, if you want a recap of the evening, then check out spaceup.org/live. We are planning on running more of these. So obviously follow us on social media to keep apprised of our latest developments. And before we go to our montage 6 seconds to land, Ryan, do you want to say anything? And Remco?
Yeah, this has been a truly fantastic event. It's been great to see the engagement on social media, both on YouTube and also on Twitter. And thank you, Remco, also for helping us to moderate that. And you know, I think it's great those that are left, as you say, at the end of the call that have kept watching. So Remco.
Yeah, it's clearly a team effort. So thank you, Ryan and Ryan, for the initiative. This is a much bigger success than I dreamt of a few weeks ago when we first discussed this. So thank you very much. This was not easy, nerve-wracking, but wow, what a great event. So thank you very much, and I'm really looking forward to the next one. Please keep the discussion going on SpaceUp Live, and I'd say roll those 60-second to land videos.
Yeah, thank you very much, everyone. So let's go to 6 seconds to land. So. Okay, thank you, Isabel there. So on Twitter, ID Ariane. Sorry, a little bit, I don't know whether the audio was a little bit low on that. I did try turning it up. So next, the next video is from James Moore from Corkspin.
Hi, my name is James Moore. I'm from Alabama, home of Space Camp in the U.S. Space and Rocket Center. And yes, in case you didn't know, we still build rockets here in Alabama. In fact, we never stopped. I'm excited about the 10-year anniversary of SpaceUp. In case you didn't know what my tie to SpaceUp is, I'm the keeper of the moon pie eating contest rules, which started with the very first SpaceUp. I'm excited to be a part of this SpaceUp because I've actually never. Hi, my name is.
Sorry, we still can't see it, Ryan.
Oh, you can't see it?
No.
Is I'm the keeper of the.
Oh. Really? That's very weird. I'm just going to
unshare and reshare.
Yeah, I don't know what happened there. Did the connection drop? That's strange. I thought it was going ahead. Yeah. Oh, I think. Oh, okay. There we go. Let's try again. Oh, well, I'll go back.
Hi, my name is James Moore. I'm from Alabama, home of Space Camp in the U.S. Space and Rocket Center. And yes, in case you didn't know, we still build rockets here in Alabama. In fact, we never stopped. I'm excited about the 10-year anniversary of SpaceUp. In case you didn't know what my tie to SpaceUp is, I'm the keeper of the moon pie eating contest rules, which started with the very first SpaceUp. I'm excited to be a part of this SpaceUp because I've actually never been to one. So this will be a new experience for me. In case you are interested in looking at the rules or learning more about the history of the moon pie eating contest, you can look at the SpaceUp website or the SpaceUp wiki. Hopefully one day we can all meet in person and I can hand you a moon pie personally. Thanks.
Okay, I hope you all saw that one that time. Okay, next is Damien.
Hi, I'm Damien. I attended the first SpaceUp in Europe in 2012. I was at the time very curious about the format of this unconference and did not know at all what to expect. It acted as a launchpad for my involvement in space activities. First, I co-organized SpaceUp Paris in 2013, and I co-organized SpaceUp Toulouse in 2014. And it also led me to join my local Fab Lab in order to develop a rocket motor. That led me afterwards to joining a team to design and launch successfully an experimental rocket. And then in 2017, I became one of the founding members of Federation Open Space Makers. I will talk about that a bit more in details in a T-5 later today. But let's just say that some of the projects we are leading there are looking at Venus and are looking at Mars. So what will happen to you after the SpaceUp? I hope you enjoy it and then get involved.
Okay, and then the final one. Let me just go back. Yeah, the final one here by Spacebit.
So Spacebit refers to the company that's actually flying to the moon. You want to go and explore latitudes. So we have a new approach, so that's how our looks like. It's very small, so if you lose it, it's not as much of a problem if you lose a big one. And so we can send more of them in different locations, in different places, and risk them actually. Thank you very much.
And thanks again there, Spacebit. So yeah, sorry about a few technical issues there, but I hope you all heard the videos in the end. So yeah, I want to thank again my colleague Ryan and also Remco there for moderating, but also Spacebit again for sponsoring all the different speakers we've had this evening here, and of course you, our audience there on YouTube, and again thank you those that are still watching. So it's been incredible. We do plan to do more of these, so do stay tuned, and yeah, see you around, see you on Twitter at SpaceUp Live, at SpaceUp Leicester, and hashtag SpaceUp Live. So I think with that we draw to a close. Yeah.
Wonderful. Thanks, everyone. Bye.
Thank you all.
Thank
Bye.
you.
Okay.
Bye.
Bye all.
Bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Thank you so much. Bye-bye.
Have a good
Bye
night. Bye-bye.
Bye, guys.
Bye.
Live from space.
Bye. Thanks.